Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you all for coming out on a Sunday, no less. I'm Sam O'Hare. I'm VFX supervisor, and I'm the treasurer for the New York section of the VES. This event came about really because it seemed like every conversation I was having with friends and colleagues over the last year or so was based around two things, like what's going on with AI, what's that going to do with our workflows in the future, and also what's going on with the industry. It's been a tough couple of years for a lot of people, especially in film and TV. And I wanted to have some people come together and just talk about the trends that they're seeing and what they think is going to happen in the future and where we're going to go from here. So I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Topaz, Weavy, and SVA for the use of this lovely video. And I know we started 10 minutes late, so we're going to push the schedule a little bit to make sure that everyone still has enough time. But our first speaker is Andy Melkus, and I'm going to hand it over to him. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm going to start my timer here so I can, otherwise I tend to ramble. It's like watching the aging process unfold in real time. My name is Andy Melkus. I'm a visual effects artist and a visual effects supervisor. I've been doing this here in New York for close to 30 years. And I also am the co-founder of Logic.tv, which is the online community for artists who use Autodesk Flame. And, I, like everyone else, or like Sam just said, the biggest topic like on our Logic community is about AI. What are these things? Do they live up to the hype? Are they going to take my job? And no one has an answer, right? But kind of the perspective I've taken on all of the ML and AI tools that are available is, again, I've been doing this for 30 years, and for 30 years, there's always been new technology. And new technology has always had a promise. And, if there's one constant in visual effects that I've experienced is that like there's a unrelenting downward pressure of money and time on us. Our clients always want more with less time and less money. And the way that we've been able to do that successfully, or at least I have in commercial VFX, is to kind of ride the wave of technology, see what you can use to your advantage to kind of help you stay ahead of that curve. And if you happen to get something like artistically or creatively fulfilling out of it, that's a bonus too, right? So I wanted to show you kind of a sample of the AI and ML tools that I've been using as part of my visual effects work. This is based on a presentation I gave at IBC a couple weeks ago. And it really is, I'm asking everyone to come on a journey with me on this Sunday morning, right? And kind of give you a little bit of a window into what my therapist says is a very interesting mind. And he'd know, So I'm going to start off with something simple, but I think it's going to help frame the conversation in a good way. And so a few months ago, I did some spots for Weight Watchers. They had a campaign where they had some of their customers, as part of a photo shoot. And the whole concept of the campaign is we're going to have behind the scenes photos of the photo shoot. And everybody loved this and it was amazing. And then, just after the color grade, the client asked one question, and that was, you're going to get rid of all those flashes, right? Which is, somewhat antithetical to having a behind the scenes photo shoot as your idea, but sure. So my client reaches out to me and says, can you do this? There are 32 clips like this. And so I said, sure, I've done this a million times. There's always a bad frame in something, right? And the way you get rid of a bad frame is you have to construct that frame from the frame before and the frame after. All right. You have to create an in-between. And, if I just showed you this, which is just an in-between of the frame before and the frame after, it kind of illustrates the problem. You can't just use a dissolve, right? And the way I'd always done this is you take parts of frame A, you take parts of frame B, and you cut them out, you warp and blend and push them. And so I said, okay, there's 32 of these. I'm going to need 3 days to do this work. And they were like, great, my God, you're amazing. Thank you. And so I don't know that they said that. I think they just said that approved, but as someone who's craved approval for their whole, anyway. diving very deep into I'm leaning in to my mental health situation. So I took a look at this, and in a recent release of Flame, they introduced a morph tool that was their answer to fluid morphs. Raise your hand if you hate fluid morphs, or at least have a love-hate relationship with them. All your hands should be up, by the way. So now we've established a baseline for who's truthful. So I went ahead and said, a fluid morph is really just creating a transition, right? It's creating a new frame. And so I went ahead and made a little, gap effect for these 3 frames that are above the clip. And we know the audio is working. And I did something as simple as this, right? I grabbed our new morph tool and made my connections. This is where I'm going to tell everybody I brought a full-size keyboard with me. Anyway, so here is simple morph tool, and basically you tell it, freeze the first frame, freeze the last frame, and make an in-between. And so as soon as I press, next frame, the ML model will be loaded, and it's going to do its best to kind of make an in-between, and it's done. Okay? And I was like, oh my God, it did it. It made an in-between. And I was like, that's amazing. I didn't set any parameters. I didn't draw any splines. I just relied on the model to look at these 2 things and figure out what it needed to make. And then I said to myself, well, since I didn't set any keyframes or anything, I wonder what would happen if I just copy this effect and paste it right at the next flash frame, right? And that's done also, right? And then so on and so on and so on. And in about 45 minutes, I did my 3 days worth of work. And thank you. Yes. I'll leave you in the contract, please. And I'm not gonna. There was a little bit of guilt, but what I fell back on was something that was said to me at a presentation I gave last year, which was like, you've been doing this for 30 years, so it didn't take you 30 minutes to do this. It took you 30 years plus 30 minutes, right? Like, I pay for the tools, my clients pay for me. And I was able to look at this and go, maybe this is something I could use. So I reached out through Logic. We have a great relationship with the developers for Flame. And I reached out to them and told them of the success that I had. And they explained to me, well, this is how these models work. We train them specifically on creating a new in-between frame, which is so different from optical flow and all these other things that we've used over the years where, you kind of look at a shot and go, yeah, that's going to give me artifacts. Models don't work that way. And the first lesson that I learned, and the most important lesson I can share with all of you, is when you're looking at AI tools, understand how they think. I know that's anthropomorphizing a bit, but if you can understand what the model is looking for or what it's seeing or how it's been trained, you're going to get better results, or at least maybe you'll waste less time, right? Here's another example of the same technique or a similar technique. I had this shot here, which I thought was just going to be like a screen comp. And I was really pissed that the tracking marks were so big and at the edge of the frame because we had an opportunity to do this correctly, but no one asked. That again, I can tell who's been in this situation based on the laughter. But what was interesting is that when the shot comes back, right, or the laptop comes back into frame, the actress comes in and touches a key on the keyboard and the whole screen shakes. And so the real visual effects ask for me was, can we stop the screen from shaking? Thank you. And even I just heard someone go, and so if you know, you know. So I went and I looked at the shot, right? Well, the first thing I did is I brought it into Synthesize, which is the camera tracking tool by VFX, and got a really good track and set locators where I needed to set them, and use that to stabilize this shot, right? And so I have, a laptop screen that's kind of stable. All it is bouncing. And when I stepped through this, I discovered that the cadence for the bouncing is 7 frames, okay? So I went ahead and just, hold on. We've all done that, right? I went ahead and sped up the shot so that way what I had essentially was a laptop that didn't shake anymore. So make that a little bigger, right? So it doesn't bounce anymore. And then I went ahead and used the time warp tool, but set to machine learning here, and slowed it back down to its original speed. All right. And since this was a reflection in a surface, there's going to be some kind of flowing and artifacting, but for a reflection, this is done. You know what I mean? So, I'm going to try to breeze through this as quickly as I can. But I also took the bezel, and using that same morph technique, I just morphed between some keyframes so that I got there's lighting changes going on, right? And if you think about it, and this is how I try to think about it, if I have anything that normally would cause a nightmare, a shadow going across a reflective surface, a light hit, going across a sheen, going across a metallic surface or an edge, these are things that normally would never like time warp properly. But with machine learning, you get much better results because it's making an in between. And at the end of the day here, I was able to very quickly unstabilize what I did. Let me play that for you. And you get a shot that doesn't bounce, and the client's happy, and they're going to sell 6 more of whatever it is they're selling in Wichita or whatever the brief was for this commercial. And but at the end of the day, by kind of reprogramming my brain as to how I look at problems and try to apply the tools to solve those problems, you can find that this isn't a one-button solution, but if you apply the machine learning tools as they're designed, you can get amazing results. And of course, I reached out to the guys at Autodesk and told them this, and they explained to me how I do a lot of car work. And they explained to me that they have a new model with the 2026 release that was specifically trained on vertical lines going horizontally, which is like the bane of everyone's existence for anything, especially if you work with cars. So, I now have like 2 different options I can try on my next car spot. Maybe one that works better for vertical lines, maybe one that works better for liquids, fabrics, things like that. But think about the models that are involved and try to understand, how they work. I'm so glad I turned on Do Not Disturb because I just got 4 texts from my daughter. So it's basically like any other day when I'm working in visual effects. So moving on, I worked on a documentary last year that was about George Washington. They found a guy who had a horse and a hat and a cape, and they shot him here. And the thing that the visual effects asked for this was most of the lore of George Washington it took place during the winter of 1776, and this is decidedly not the winter. So we had to winterize this shot, right? And yes, there are AI options to do this. Lots of times, though, they come with certain limitations, like whether it's temporal inconsistency, resolution, things like that. I try not to focus on the negatives, and I try to focus on like the useful parts of each one of these tools. So I learned this technique from a flame artist here in New York named Mark French, who's an absolute genius and hell of a nice guy. And I just went ahead and keyed the brown grass and used that matte, noisy as it is, to color correct the brown to white essentially, and all that noise in the matte creates these wonderful little happy accidents. Like, there's snow that's been on this tree for a month, even though there wasn't any. And feel free to applaud at any of this. Don't hold back from my. It's not going to interrupt my flow. But like the thing that always happens with keying is the in this case the horse and GW get contaminated in with the color correct, and I want to preserve them. That's going to require roto. This was for a documentary. There's not a lot of money in it. And on our Logic forum, someone did a post about a tool called Sammy Roto, which is an open source ML Roto tool that's based on the model called Matt Anyone, I believe, or Matt Anything. And what's amazing is, there are certainly like online tools that you can upload your clip to and get some roto, but there are always instances where like due to NDA reasons or whatever, you can't use the cloud. So Sammy Roto runs locally. It runs in a browser, but it's all local. And basically you have your clip here, and like any good segmentation tool, you click on the thing you want a matte for, right? And then say, run matting. And this is just running locally on my MacBook Pro here. Of course, it is not running right now because this is a live demo. But let me tell you something. It's amazing how quickly this thing runs. But I loaded the matte that I got in about 4 minutes. again, running locally on a MacBook Pro, and I loaded this mat in, and what I got was remarkable for what it is. You know, I got detail. I mean, the cloak was great. I got detail in the mane of the horse's tail. I was kind of blown away, you know? And again, the more I kind of dove into this, you learn that what is this model trained on? It's trained on people, it's trained on animals, it's trained on, so you're going to get good results. I tried to use Sammy Roto here for another job I did where I had like 4 or 5 trees in big like planters. Failed because and I realized, well, it's probably never seen a tree in a planter before or something like that. And so it's not that the tool sucks, it's just that this is not what it was designed for. But the end result of this was something that, totally worked, given the parameters that I had. I didn't need this to be pixel accurate. I didn't need it to be, I'm not combining 2 different color plates or anything like that. And it has the benefit of running locally in case, you do need to keep things on-prem. Speaking of running things locally, one of my absolute favorite ML tools to use is Copycat in Nuke. Anybody here have any experience with Copycat? Oh, good. Look at the hands. It's Copycat is a tool available in Nuke that allows you to train your own ML tools, right? You train your own models. And the typical use case for this is something where there's like an economy of scale. Like it takes time and resources to train a model, right? So one of the demos that they show with Copycat is to use it for Roto. And if you give it a before and after, if you give it a frame and a corresponding frame of Roto, if you give it enough frames that are representative of what is in the clip, you could get a mat that looks much better than anything that like a general ML tool will do for you. But really, it could take all day to train the model. And that's kind of how I approached Copycat for the longest time, until I started working for myself and started to be my own producer and really got into the math involved. And like, I was working on this is from a TV show that I worked on where, here we go, I think it was 80 shots to do. I needed to, kind of get 3 or 4 shots done in a day. And I had this shot here where this guy's got a bunch of reflections in his glasses. And I've done this a million times over 30 years. You got to paint clean frames. You got to animate your own eyes. You got to roto the glasses frames back in. It's doable, but it's time consuming. And I looked at this and said, well, this could take me, 4 to 6 hours to do because it's 97 frames. But one of the things I've been thinking about in terms of training my own models is like, instead of thinking about this as like an economies of scale problem, what if I thought of this as like an assistant, right? So I went ahead and found 13 frames that were good representatives of all the frames in the clip, right? So if you kind of look at the frame range of frames, you have him looking straight, you have him looking to the side, you have him looking up, you have him looking down, you have him with the eyes open, you have him with the eyes closed. And I went and just painted a corresponding clean frame, right? That's it. And then set this to train. I think it took like 3 or 4 hours to train the Copycat model. It ran 200,000 iterations, or epochs as they call them. And I used those 3 or 4 hours to do the other 3 shots that were on my schedule for that day. All right. And so by the end of the day, or by that afternoon or after lunch or whatever, the training was finished. I hit create inference, which gives you this inference node here, which is your trained model. And what I got was, here's like the before, and then this is what the model gives you, right? And it looks great. And I know that there's someone in the audience who's like, but Andy, that's a frame you trained this on. Of course it's going to be great. And that guy is sitting right over there because I heard him laugh first. But if I just run this, right? So this is running the model in real time on a MacBook Pro, okay? And so the half hour that I spent painting, and then the 4 hours that this spent learning, if this was the only shot I had to do, it would not have been a good use of my time. But I had 3 other things to do that ML or AI couldn't help me with, So I thought that this was an excellent use case for kind of rethinking how these tools can be used. That there is certainly an advantage to the time you put into the training. Another example of this that I absolutely love is I was working on, not that, we just looked at that. Yes, I was looking at this. I was working on this shot um, for a commercial of this guy looking through a telescope in front of this field. And, in their color grade session, they asked their colorist, hey, is there anything you could do to make the grass green? And the colorist was like, sure, I can do that. And that's what the colorist did. And the grass is green. And they were like, yeah, but can you combine the two plates? And he's like, no, Andy can do that in flame. And so this I got this and get 27 years, man. I've seen it all. These things are pain because the golden rule of swinging color is it's easy to swing the hue. It's very difficult to swing the brightness. And if you do have to swing the brightness, you're going to be fighting edges. You're always going to be fighting a bright edge or a dark edge. And if there's motion blur, forget about it. And it can be extraordinarily time consuming. So I did the same thing that I just described with the glasses shot. And that is I went and looked and found 9 frames that were a good subset of the frames that make up this shot, right? The guy facing forward, facing side, his arms up, his arms down. And I went and I painted painstakingly 9 perfect frames with perfect edges. And then set that off to train, and it took a few hours or whatever it took while I worked on the other things that I had to do that day. And the result that I got out of Nuke or out of Copycat, from Nuke was this, and it's insane. Okay, I mean straight down to the there's like a zipper that like it got. There are a couple of frames of motion blur that needed to be painted, but you always have to paint the motion blur. So again, thank you. Yes, you've been in this situation before. We have shared trauma, right? Shared visual effects trauma. But again, this isn't keying where you're picking one color and turning it into another color, right? It isn't roto. It's like you're training a model to turn one pile of pixels into another pile of pixels. And if you start thinking about ML in that term, in those kind of terms, it opens up a whole new kind of like chapter of possibilities, which for me as an individual freelancer was very exciting. Moving on. Wow, this is going, I don't want to jinx it. Okay. Moving on. Thank you, Charles. That's going to be in the back of my mind for the next 20 minutes. So I had this shot here where I was working on a film, and we're moving into the Gen AI segment of the presentation now. Where the direction from the director was, can it look like it snowed 3 days ago? And so I was like, sure, absolutely. So for this, I went into Photoshop and used Photoshop's Gen AI, which, by the way, I heard this on The Verge, which is amazing, that Adobe has metrics that the Gen AI features in Photoshop are used as often as layers. So I'm going to let that sit for a little while. But basically, I drew a mask around like this part of the grass and gave it a prompt of add a little bit of old melted snow, and you get what you get. You get a variety. You kind of pick what you want. And I did this in all these different parts of the frame. And I was like, you know what? There should be some snow on the windowsills too. And when I did that, I realized the problem. Okay, and this is a problem. It's a thing that happens with Gen AI. Is it has the potential to change your image. All right. So if you look here, this didn't just add snow; it totally changed the facade of the building, which maybe in some cases is fine, but in some cases that is absolutely not fine. So I looked at this and said, well, there are still amazing things to glean or to take from this shot. I finished out the snow, and I had to change the name of the high school there. And so I gave it the prompt of please remove the text, but keep the stone looking just as weathered. And now I didn't have to paint that with nothing to borrow from. So that was very helpful. But I loaded this into Flame and said to myself, I can't use the structures, the buildings or anything like that. But what I certainly can do is combine all of the pieces of the image together and just do a luma key on the snow. All right. And then I was able to comp the snow in and kind of warp it and bend it and pull it because, the snow that was generated to match architecture that should not be there. But the bottom line is like, I realized, okay, I can use the Gen AI features of Photoshop to create bits and pieces for me, so I can still satisfy the requirements for the shot and have all the flexibility that you need when you're working interactively with the client. Because even though the tools, the Gen AI tools have gotten more stable, or there are aspects of it that have gotten more stable, there's still the possibility that, you know, you try to make a tweak and you get some radical change. And maybe clients will get accustomed to that, but right now they're not, you know, or at least my like typical agency clients or whatever, they want to be able to tweak. And this gave me the flexibility to not have to like fight with stock imagery, but and not have to fight with AI, but have all the pieces I need to do what it is that I do. The next piece of Gen AI that I wanted to show you was another shot in a movie. I had a blue screen shot, driving shot. And thank God on set, the lighting department did what they have to do, right? They made all the interactive lighting, because this is supposed to be driving through a town at night. The town of Beacon, New York, if anybody's familiar. And the only, this is just a short shot, it was 32 frames, but the only element they had for a background plate was 18 frames of this. And I don't know why, except that I'm guessing that on the 19th frame, the camera fell off the car or something, right? Like, I didn't ask, but they were like, is there anything you can do? And I was like, well, okay. So for me, this was an excellent, again, another excellent use of Gen AI, in that I needed, for continuity's sake, I needed a background that stylistically matched, you know, what an exterior shot of this car was going to look like. But it's going to be all out of focus. So like there is a lot of leeway. And when you start to look at what are sometimes the limitations of Gen AI, the resolution or image quality, or sometimes there's like weird texture patterns and certain things, doesn't matter, because this is going to be racked out of focus. Okay. So I had been experimenting with Comfy UI, and I had gone ahead and taken one frame of this background plate. Make sure I got this here. Hold on. Yes, I took one frame of the background and loaded it into Comfy using an image to video model that I downloaded from, or a workflow I downloaded from an amazing YouTuber, Pixarama, I believe it's called. And yes, so I fed this image in, and the results that I got back were terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I quickly realized why. Okay? Well, I was prompting it wrong. Okay? One of the amazing lessons I learned in doing this was, if you're not getting the result you want, go ahead and feed your image into whatever. In this case, I fed this image into ChatGPT and said, look at this image and tell me what you see. And it gave me back all the language that I needed to prompt this properly. I didn't know that that was a thing, you know, but that has completely transformed how I deal with any kind of Gen AI problem. It eliminates the language barrier, so to speak. And just for giggles, right, I fed this into Sora, you know, OpenAI's Gen AI, generative video tool or whatever, and it gave me some interesting things. I felt that they were a little too like clean, you know, in some respect. Like, they didn't have the pockets of darkness that like the original plate had. But the best thing that it gave me was this. Check this out. I could watch a whole movie based on this. This is amazing. What's that? You know, what kind of fever dream? But it answered the prompt. If you read the prompt, that's exactly what it is, you know? An eerie road closure. It's what it says right at the top. So anyway, this is all part of a journey. But one of the things, even though I improved the prompt, one of the things I couldn't get, no matter how hard I tried, was a view out the back window of the car. So it just told me that this was probably all trained on clips going that way. Okay, fine, I'll just reverse the clip. That's fine, you know? There was some like Inception level bullshit going on, which I loved. And that's kind of the fun, especially with Comfy UI. You're not paying. There's no credits involved in the generation. You just keep going. But I did end up with one that had a lot of great promise, which was this one here. There were moments. I only need like 40 frames or something, but I was able to load that in and get what I needed. Is this the right shot? That's not even the right shot. Hold on. That's the right shot. There we go. You know, it had all of the stylistic elements that it needed. And the only thing I couldn't get it to do, I couldn't get it to turn. I tried so many times prompting it saying like, and when you get to an intersection, make a right turn. And that's one of those inception things. It didn't turn, but the world kind of changed, you know, because it may not know, maybe it wasn't trained on what a turn is. So I just stitched two of these images together and made my own turn. Out of focus, it's magical. But again, great use for, like, how many times have you been handed a piece of stock footage or something and you try to shoehorn it into the right color space, the right color temperature, all these things, and it just doesn't work? Or maybe it passes the squint test, but why do this if that's, you know, the bar? Again, a great use that I found for Gen AI. I wanted to also show you a Gen AI failure, and I don't mean this in a critical way. I mean, this is something I tried to do and it didn't work, but it taught me the most valuable lesson and really kind of pivoted my outlook towards these tools in a different direction. I was working on this movie, and there was this shot, and it's kind of hard to see unless I scrub it a little faster, but a Steadicam shot, and the Steadicam operator like stepped over a wire or something, and like there's a dip there, and the request was, can you stabilize this? Right. Same guy, right? We've been on similar journeys, my friend. Well, this is like a shot that's moving in so many different planes of depth that, like, what do you stabilize? If you stabilize the kid, the microphone, and the people in the background, their movement's going to be, you know, exacerbated. So there's a technique in AI or ML image generation called first frame, last frame, where you give it like first frame, last. If you've ever seen the infinite AI videos of like the cast of like Cheers, you know, then and now, this is how it's done. So I picked the frame before the bump and the frame after the bump, and loaded those into Comfy and proceeded with, you know, and gave it a prompt of please generate a smooth transition for me from the first frame to the last frame or something like that. And if you look, the kid, he's looking straight ahead, and then he closes his eyes and turns his head, right? And so I just let it run and got iteration after iteration. And like I looked at the first one and I was like, oh my God, the bump's gone. I did it. You know, I feel like Dr. Frankenstein or something. Like I've achieved a miracle. But then when I watched it back a couple of times, I realized the bump's gone, but this dude with the eye patch is now dancing. Okay? And like every one of these clips had its own set of things that wasn't expected. This is my favorite, for no reason, whenever kid's singing, where he wasn't singing. But if you think about it, the model was probably trained on lots of clips. And if, and this kid's standing behind a microphone on a stage, somebody standing behind a microphone is either talking or singing some statistical, you know, some probabilistic number of times. So I see why it got there. But the lesson that I took away from this was that one of the risks of the Gen AI tools is it's going to make something new. And again, maybe that's fine, but I couldn't go to the director and say, hey, I solved your stabilization problem, but I changed all the performances, you know, like that just wouldn't fly. So I kind of parked that in my head. And then a month ago, I guess it was, Gemini, Google Gemini 2 point whatever, Nano Banana came out, like the latest model. That was the hottest thing for that week. And I started to mess around with it, right? And this is the story. This is the use case, right? I had just worked on a car commercial where there were a couple shots that where the camera was inside the car and the car was blue. It was blue screen, and they shot a background plate, and background plate was beautiful. They shot it in the proper location and everything. The editor just did what editors do, and that's fine. Just did an A over B, just did A over B, right? And the client fell in love with that. So when they gave the background plate and the blue screen comp to us compositors, we did what we always do. We try to find the horizon and try to line up the angle and do your best to make it accurate. And showed this to the client. They freaked out. They freaked out because we don't see the road anymore. And then you get into that awkward conversation that you don't want to have, where you just say like, well, this is right. You don't want to ever say that, like, this is correct, and what you like is wrong, because that's the wrong way to kind of start a creative, collaborative session. But again, it stuck with me. And so I've been using Gen AI, or really in this case, Gemini, a lot for this. I found this stock footage shot, and I love it because honestly, what the hell is going on here, right? Everybody's on green screen. The people behind are 3 feet, or I'm sorry, are like a foot, above the people in front. Either this is a studio that was built on the side of a mountain. You don't know, where's the horizon? Where's the vanishing point? Where are all these things? I don't know. But you know what probably has seen more examples of pictures than me is some giant model that's been trained on millions and millions of pictures. So when it came to creating a background for this, again, I used Comfy, but the model that I picked was Gemini, and I gave it a prompt of I think I even have the model open here. Yes, there we are. I started out with, can you have these people standing in the bleachers of a sports stadium, right? And for every image cost 3 cents that I got back, which is a great value. But what I got back was amazing. In that, here, let me show you the range of things that I got back. So this was the, let me just do a side by side so we can keep the reference over here. So this is great, right? Because these people are now in a sports stadium on the bleachers. Everybody's different, like people are looking in different places. The people in the back are now below the people above. In certain instances, that could be great because if you've been doing this long enough, you'll know that they come up with an idea in the edit room and we need to Frankenstein people's heads together. But anyway, I was like, still, this changed my source image. I can't really use that. So I went, this also changed the source image. They eliminated 2 people. I don't know if they went to the bathroom or, it was, I have no idea. And everyone's different. At least here, they're in the right configuration, albeit standing. I mean, as I was getting iteration after iteration, it was getting more and more usable, more and more accurate, more and more correct, which is great. And I kind of finally landed on this, and I was like, well, listen, this at least has potential, because it solved the background problem for me. It found the horizon. Some things would need to be tweaked or fixed or whatever, but I decided to change the prompt to, I think I had just seen a travel video about Switzerland or something. So, oh no, it's the 60th anniversary of The Sound of Music. That's what it was. Sorry. Now you know a little bit about what's in my algorithm. So I said, could you please put these people on a lush hill like you'd find in the Swiss Alps, but change the lighting to so that it's golden hour, right? So I went ahead and got some more versions out of Gemini, and I saw this and I was like, yeah, that's great. I've been given so many background plates where you need to try to warp a hill to meet where the dog is sitting or something because they're on a blue screen crate. This solved so many problems, and I was really excited. So I saw this and I was like, this is actually kind of useful, and I'll show you what I mean, right? I was like, I like where this is going, and maybe I could show this to my client as a sample for a sample of where it could go, in your look development phase. And what I like about that is this at least is accurate, right? It's not usable, but it's accurate. It's got all the problems, right? Or the challenge, what limitations, not problems. You can't go higher in HD, your temporal instability, whatever, right? It changes the people and their performance. So what I did instead was I used this as a reference. Well, the first thing I did is I fed this very same image back into Gemini with the prompt of, can you remove the 6 people? And it gave me a perfect clean plate, which is great. And I believe I up-res this with Topaz, one of our sponsors today. Round of applause for. Thank you. And then started to solve this problem the way that a visual effects artist solves this problem. I just comped it. So I have here the green screen of the people doing what they do. I suppress the green because that's what we do. And then I use a tool called reverse grade, which basically you pick the white and black point of your green screen plate, and you pick the white and the black point of your reference here. And what it gave me for free was Nothing. Hold on. What it gave me for free is this. Oh, there we go. Right? I was able to use what AI gave me, not as a final, but as a perfect guide for how do I have to change the color so that this foreground matches the background, which is something that as a flame artist I always struggle with, right? I then went and started to key this, and it still needs work. It's nowhere near done, but I just wanted to show you, like, in a short amount of time, I was able to get something that works, and I'm not handed elements that will never work with expectations that'll never be met. And I even went so far as to I took the shot. I didn't get far enough to prep this for today, but I took the shot and uploaded it to a website called Beeble, which will do things like spit out all the AOVs that you'd ever need for a shot. Because I wanted to put some golden hour lighting on this, and it's like, well, if I have normals for these people, then I can at least put some directional lighting or color correct on them, as opposed to faking it with garbage masks and paint and things that never work, and you're always fighting it. And again, another amazing use for AI is getting you kind of where you need to go. Wow, it's perfect. It's 39:38. Oh, yes. I'm coming in just at 40 minutes. That's my little presentation for today of the different ways that I've been using AI or ML tools, and I just wanted to open it up if we have a minute, if anybody had any questions. After you applaud, of course. Thank you.
When you're training local for what type of performance did you get in machine for
Perfect question. Did everybody hear the question? It's if you're training local, like with Copycat, how do you handle the performance hit? I eventually or ultimately bought a second machine. Yeah, and like whatever, you can go on eBay or whatever, get a machine that's for like $3,000 or $4,000. You can get something that's great. You'll make that back on 2 jobs if you use it right. So, and it also helps if anybody's dealing with a client where there's like crazy NDA requirements or security requirements, and you have to have a machine off the internet. Having a second machine, that was another way to justify the expense. Mm-hmm. No, the primary idea first was roto. When I first started using it, it was to do roto, and then it was for like beauty work. I was doing a lot of beauty work on the same talent over and over and over again. And so we were doing some training to deal with issues where you had economies of scale, right? I used it on a movie once where I had to blend prosthetics. And so I had like 30 shots of the same person and the same lighting. So I was able to build a set for that. And that was how I always approached this until, actually the first thing I used for was combining the color plates. Where I was like, oh, okay, there could be another pathway towards using this that isn't like limited to economies of scale, but more for how do I manage my time or maximize productivity.
Yeah, so, sorry, that was back in primary. This show that example of
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned that 3 or 4 hours to train.
Yeah.
There's another question I've been asked about pre-trained models that come. Trained model.
Mm-hmm.
But that 3 or 4 hours, so is that shot?
Yeah.
So that's why I asked. I'm so that, yeah, you're doing 3 hours, but those 3 hours is shot compared to then its own day when you're working on another one. Next one.
Yeah. Especially if you're working on long form, the only way to stay profitable is turnover. I have to get through X number of shots per day, like that and it kind of waxes and wanes depending on the flow of the day and things like that. But what I was looking at was like, okay, if I had to do this the hard way, I'll do it the hard way. But if there's some way to still meet my quota essentially and solve this problem, great. And with this TV show, there were 3 shots of this guy. I didn't show that here. I was able to use the same model for 3 shots, which was great. But that other one with the grass and everything was just a one-off. But no. I use the pre-trained models for upscaling, for deblur, things like that. But what you find, or what I found, is that, like, these are bespoke. Like, you can only train. I mean, this is my understanding. You can only train so many things. You can only do so much training. There's like an infinite number of possible ways to have reflections on glasses. So I don't know that a pre-trained model, while it might help, is ever going to be as reliable, especially at the quality levels we need for high-end finishing, than training your own, which comes with its own challenges, usually resource challenges. Yeah, bingo. All right, we have time for one more, Sam.
I think we need to call it there, but there's time for a Q&A during the panel. So, yes.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Good morning, guys. Thank you for coming. My name is Yuri Kilevnik. I'm a creative director and AI VFX workflow architect at Runway. I'm at the company who's actually building all of this AI that we see around. My title means that I'm also helping the visual effects studios to build their internal pipelines with AI models and stuff they can run also internally. Today I will show you a lot of use cases, how you can use AI with like a full control, combine it with 3D, using your 3D assets library, etc. I have some background from TV and television and films. I worked on a couple of projects. But I want to start to talk, about the evolution of AI, like how it started and my experience with it. I kind of started using it in 2018. That was the time where it was called machine learning. Nobody called it AI. And I started to play with a tool from NVIDIA, and it's called StyleGAN. To me, it was amazing. You could like train your own image model, and I remember I started like training people, and then you can say, oh, those people never existed. It's everything generated. And I remember I showed it to the producer I worked, exactly this type of video. And he was like, okay, what are you showing me? I was like, those people never existed. You can actually start building like a CG people. And he saw this quality, he was like, thinking crazy. But then he came to me like a week later, and he was like, okay, I found a project where we can maybe utilize that. And it was for the singer The Weeknd that needed to do like a avatar of himself because COVID started. And then he told me, just like 2 weeks to build a whole avatar that's talking to the people, reading metadata from their profile on Spotify. And like, talking like a now GPT model, and it didn't exist at the time. So it was a bit freaked out, but we delivered the project. I want to show you the quick making of.
On March 20, The Weeknd released his new album After Hours, which quickly topped Spotify's charts. The album introduced an even darker side to The Weeknd.
The album name comes from all the emotions and thoughts and feelings that I had late at night.
But then, the music world hit pause.
Many shows are either being canceled or postponed.
Since fans couldn't see The Weeknd tour, we brought The Weeknd to his fans by combining deep learning technology with listening data for the first time ever. We created a digital experience called Alone With Me, an AI of The Weeknd that seems to know everything about you,
Hey Tom,
even your name.
thanks so much for listening to my music. It means a lot to me. I see that you're in the top 1% of my listeners. That's unreal. Damn, you and I go way back. You've been listening to me on Spotify since 2014. I remember those days. Man, you've listened to After Hours more than 50 times. That's your favorite song of After Hours. I respect that. Be careful. You can get lost in it.
The AI was trained with existing footage and recordings of Abel, along with Spotify users' data to generate millions of outputs, creating a lifelike Weeknd that speaks directly to each fan. And once he's done talking, he plays a bit of his music in a unique WebGL-driven listening experience. The experience connected his fans in a way that's never been done. 600,000 fans visited the site in the first 48 hours, and the weekend knew every single one of them.
Cool. So what I wanted to show with this is that, like, from the image that you saw before, which is this one, that you are actually able to create a photorealistic looking thing. So that's important to you, not just look like where AI is bad, but to look like how you can leverage in your project. Then the other, sorry. This is one of the first generated video with prompt, and I remember I brought this one to my boss when we've been pitching a project for a major studio, and they've been looking to create like a huge shield and like a red wall made from analog noise, and they didn't want to use like a classic tools or plugins. They really wanted to look specific, and I remember I brought this demo to my boss and showed him like, look, I actually wrote a prompt that orange can fall from a tree. And then he was looking at it, was like, what is this? Like, what's the quality? I was like, we can actually use it in this major big movie. We can generate elements and then comp it together. And then the result was this one. So what I did, I took old TV and started recording noise in our studio. Then I took all of those footages that we made and trained the model with the quality gap that you saw before. But then we used like a Houdini and a lot of compositing to make everything look better. And we comb those layers together, so almost as you see them, they're raw. And it kind of worked perfect in like a big TV series. So this shows like that you really don't be scared to use your creativity. Like even if you see that something's not there, just it doesn't matter. You can always push it, and we are like experienced VFX artists, so we always find a way how to make things work, even though it has to be delivered in ACCG, and we figure it out in 2021 for one of the first AI generated model. Then the other project that we did a very similar way. It was actually, we've been as a team nominated for VES and then later for an Oscar for the best visual effects. So it was quite an achievement in this project, and I used like a very similar technique that like the compositing team was like preparing for me the layouts of the environment, and then I was like generating like the elements based on the client footage, and we've been comping everything together, and then we've been able to finish like the sequence pretty fast, and it looks really well. And that was 2021. So how we figured out like the small resolution, because at the time the AI was able to output everything in 256 by 256 pixels, so that's like 10 times smaller than your iPhone screen. So we actually built a tool that you've been generating things in the squares that you've been multiplying 10 times, so suddenly you get 10 times bigger resolution, where you get into almost 2.5K, and it became useful. So that's how we've been able to deliver huge sequence like that. This was a theatrical release, so we have to respect, like, again, the color spaces, so the grading can do their job. And yeah, it was 2021. Cool. This video is from already 2023. This is runway generated video. So now you can see the progress from the first one that was generated. It was kind of very, very cartoony. And I feel that the year 2023 is the year where most of the people from our industry start taking AI seriously, because suddenly everything started looking way better, sharper. It suddenly started delivering something. So based on that, I got approached like by a producer at Framestore, Pete King, who came with the idea to do a project for WWE, and they wanted to bring. They celebrated the history of 40 years, and they wanted to bring back like Hulk Hogan and their biggest wrestlers into their young age, where they've been the most famous, and also recreate like all of the historical arenas with crowd and everything. And the goal was to do everything in 2D because of the budget and everything. So we have to make everything happen in 1 month, small team. So it was pretty big risk, but it went well. Here I have a breakdown. Um, so what we did, we shoot a plate in LA studio, just like an empty ring, and then we generated the the fighters based on the footage we got from WWE. There was like a bit struggle because the data they gave us was from 1986, so it was like a very grainy analog footage. So the issue was to clean up everything, to upright everything, because the delivery was in a 4K, and also it was running as a cinematic in the game. So we train like each fighter separately. Then we shoot like the empty plates, like this one. Then I generated for the first time the full crowd. How I did it, because at the time the AI didn't have that much fidelity and everything. So my workflow was that I used like a 3 to 5 people in a block, and then prompt them to just start cheering or movements, and then I use particle system just like to spread them as you see now, and then we just like comp them in. And then the interesting workflow for the fighter, because the client was like a very picky about how they move, how they look like. So first I was thinking, oh, maybe we can use a double, right? It will do for us the movement. But then you're locked with the movement what you have, and then if clients say, oh, I want to change, somehow we punch, because there were some specific things that I don't see but they see. How Hulk Hogan is, for example, performing. So we created like a small tool with OpenPose that you can actually take this simple skeleton and you can animate that. So that's how you drive your AI animation. Also, there was again another struggle to deliver everything in linear. So how we figured out this one, we generated PBR passes. So this is Hulk Hogan's albedo. So since I had the trained model specifically just on him, we didn't use any large model. Didn't really work at the time. So it has to be really, it was very project specific. So once I trained him, I could, ask the model to give me PBR passes, because it was also trained on the side how PBR performs. So then I get the albedo, shadows, normal pass, so I could relight him. And then all those scenes that you see, he has generated. I also must say I had 3 compositors for a month who was like fixing all of my mistakes I did. So it wasn't like easy. It looked straightforward, but it really wasn't. So all the stadium that you see, the crowd, everything is fully generated and composited in Nuke.
It's a nightmare. And that is why they call me the king. I'll show you a nightmare. Let me out.
So this project was great. Like that, we kind of found out how helpful and how important it is when you train your own model for a specific project, because that gives you the most control as an artist. And that if you work with the clients, we never deliver version 1, so you must have an option to be able to iterate. And I feel like when you're training your own, that works the best. This was another example, because based on the model we had, we can very quickly build like a real-time DH model, because it already understood human. So I just did a quick test with the Star Wars shot, where I took the old Harrison Ford and just de-aged him into young one, and this is running in a real time. So we implemented into Flame. So once you, for example, had a commercial with a lot of beauty work or de-aging stuff, you just like plug your shot, and Flame is actually giving you out already de-aged shot. You have two options. If you want to run real time, in this case, you still must feed it with like the photos or the data that how the person looked as young. Otherwise, it will hallucinate your output. So when you do it like before, the machine learning needs like probably 6 to 8 hours to train those data, and then it's running real time on the same character. So if I want to change the character, it's not gonna be real time again. I have to retrain it. But if I want to iterate very quickly, then I can use just one driving image of the young person. But then you get into a problem when, for example, the person turn and you have a profile and the AI doesn't understand, then it hallucinate. It looks nice, but the person recognizes, oh, it's suddenly not me. So again, this is like a very workflow that you actually pre-train the data of the person you de-aging. And then you don't have any like an issue that is in our industry like a legal stuff, right? Because everything you're using is with a permission and it's your own trained model. You're not using any cloud. So that's super useful. This is our sizzle reel that we just did in the first quarter 2025. Based on how AI goes fast, it's almost getting outdated, but let me play it anyway. Right, so this was fully generated images without any post-production. So just that you see the huge step that happened from just 2023 to 2025. Just a few words about Runway. Runway is a global research media company. We build in like a big models for people to be able to tell stories. We kind of trying to focus on like every person. So it doesn't matter if you do just YouTube, if you're a filmmaker. Just show you like a few things that we recently released. One of them is Aleph, which I pretty like for cleanups. So how does it work is you kind of working like with Nano Banana, right? You have a chat, you put your shot, and then you asking the chat what you want to happen. If you want to change the angle or you want to remove something, you want to relight the scene, you can use reference image if you like to. And then the model change your video based on your text input. Is do all of the tracking. So this one is pretty cool, like for a quick concepting when you have an ideas and before you go like actually into the VFX, you can just like try it first how visually it looks, and then take it from there. Our next thing is Gen 4, which is our image to video model, And then kind of my favorite is Act 2, where you can use your own performance to drive your characters. It can be cartoon, it can be realistic characters. I can show you the example. You know, you just record yourself on the phone or whatever camera you have, and then you can use whole body control, even fingers, and the model can transfer all of your motions into the character that you upload. It can be even creatures. Then the other thing that we released was references, where you can actually use the same locations, characters, or objects, and it stays consistent in your project, which is very important. So we used in this demo this guy that you see on the picture and try just to do a concept how he would look like in like different movies. So this is fully generated video just with references. The emotions are driven by Act 2.
Check them out. Lab. It's not just a mixer, it's practically a second pair of hands.
So this is like a pretty easy way how you can keep consistent character when you're doing, for example, during storyboarding. I love to use this one during storyboards, which takes me to the other topic: how are those tools actually used in film and TV? So as I just said, one thing is storyboarding. You can generate the storyboard obviously, or you can use your own that you draw, and then what you can do is you just transfer the storyboard into real looking scene, or you can even select the stylization that you want. You can even use an image prompt as an image input, so it generate the scene of your storyboard based on your reference. And what's cool that it's really keeping the structure. Then we can look at how the things are used in the pre-production. You can use the location previs, which is like pretty widely used. We hear a lot of that. You just go on your set. You have your concept art that your artist gives you. You can just upload the concept arts, do the photo of the location, and suddenly it automatically transfers your scene based on the arts that you have. And you can use motion. You can use a static image. Works both ways. So it's pretty useful. You can do all those big crowd scenes. Of course, previous we talked about. Then I built this workflow since we all have like a big asset libraries with 3D models. So here you can do. Let me play you the making of. You just take your 3D model that you already have or you built, and you can just upload it, as in a grayscale form. You don't need to even texturize it, and then you just write a prompt, what exactly you want to happen. So you don't need to animate it. You actually can animate it. I'll show you in the next one. But when you're concepting, you can just say, okay, this is a Porsche going straight or turning, and I try to do a pretty difficult motions in this video, and it actually works really well. The camera work and everything. So you can just import your 3D models and just control the whole scene. So this gives you really good consistency, because the car, objects, everything will always look the same. And the shortcut is you don't need to texturize it, you don't need to do material, no render, nothing. You just upload it. You can even put a background that you would like to be, and it automatically merge the scene, and then let your objects move in. So I was using really, really simple geometries in Maya. Then I just put them into the scene and let it animate. Cool. This one was a workflow I was building for a studio. Specifically, this was for the crowds. How you can actually do crowd like very, very quickly. This video took me around day and a half to do. And this is like a very popular thing, right, to populate the stadiums. So the workflow is that you just like take a small group of people. I kind of used the inspiration that I did before for WWE, but since we are 2 years later, it's now everything way easier. So you just populate your stadium, you make the crowd move, and then you compete together. Here I generated players with PBR, so I could relight them based on the stadium HDR, and just drop them in, and suddenly I have like a rich looking scene. Same workflow here. It was just like to create a test of the army. So I did just like a one character generated, and then I ask the AI just generate me the whole army with the depth and everything. So it gives you the image like that, and then you just let it animate, and also the track happen at the same time. So there is no problem anymore with like a 3D track. AI can handle that. So that was the other workflow. What I was thinking about, when you want to change the asset, like in your scene, because we usually 100% we get the live action plates, so we're not generating the full scenes. But for example, this one, you're holding an animal, but you want to change it to something completely else, so you can, and you also like keeping the plate as it is. So the woman was moving, she was like petting the animal, so all of those movements stays there, and the T-Rex like reacting on her movements, and so it's the hand is not sliding there, which is nicely visible in the next shot, like here. But like you see, the hands are actually moving exactly with the animal. And this was just like for fun at the end. So you can use just like generated image of the T-Rex, just say AI, okay, compete for me in there. Then I just add the women, and took like 2 hours. So that's like a one other workflow. I kind of really like it because we're using it a lot, that you changing the objects that you have in the scene. Can be especially in the commercials, you shooting like I don't know with a can, and then client asks you, okay, now I want different can. So it's like useful also for those use cases. This one I did more like an extensive camera tracking because I got a lot of questions about like a 3D track, that we don't want to be just like static, but be more like a traveling in the shots and be able to handle the 3D tracking. So this is the workflow that handled that. So I actually transferred everything into the historical looks. So first I stylized everything into the history, and then I let the model to actually do for me the tracking based on the plates. So for example, this was pretty easy. I took the plate, women walking in San Francisco down from the stairs. Then I used my crowd tool kind of to populate it and just drop her in, and the camera, everything is handled. Same here. So I'm using the camera exactly from the plate. Only thing I need is a stylized frame. So you need to show like the model, like what do you want. So you can use like your 3D work, or you can fully generate it. It's up to you. And then it handles like the 3D motion. And if something's missing, it's just created for you in the same style. So if you don't do like enough overscan, you're fine. Which was like in this case, I didn't do the right side that much, but the AI like automatically put more people there and extend the buildings. And you can do video like that within a day. The other thing is, I want to show you, this is with cooperation with Todd Bryant from NYU, who prepared me those amazing grayscale shots in Unreal Engine. And this kind of represent like probably the full control you can have now over AI. So you just render your depth pass and your grayscale scene, so the AI actually understand what's there. And then you need a good initial image with your style. So you just need to say what it is. The best is show it. So I like to use an image, but you can also use prompt. And then you say it's like a medieval scene, cinematic, everything's beautiful. And then you keep completely the movement as it is. And everything looks cinematic. What's cool about that is that anytime you decide or your client say, oh, I don't know, those people, I want to change the walk cycle, you just change it in Unreal or in your 3D software. And then if it happened, oh, I don't like the texture, you can just open Photoshop and paint over it, and the AI returns it back and make it look realistic. So I really like this workflow because this gives you like the perfect freedom. You can use like very bad geo and it still works. This one was another test when you just actually record yourself, and with the roto tool that Andy was showing, you can just turn it into the silhouette, different colors, something like an ID pass, and then you can create a kind of a street or crowd scene based on your movement. So you see the AI exactly is copying the movements of the silhouettes. So you don't actually even need to be 3D. I just like to be 3D because it's just easier for us to navigate in the 3D space, but you can stay completely 2D and just, show it the depth and it will figure it out the rest. This is pretty nice, a showcase of the object control when you restyle the scene, how it can work also in like a real life scene.
Myself, how much is something like this worth on the streets? I'll tell you, 5-6 million, easy, but you gotta have the right buyer. And in order to get the right buyer, you gotta have tangible product in hand. But I hate to break it to you, none of this is real. The background's not real, I'm not real. This box, just an Amazon box full of pom-poms. Got you again, what I'm wearing, not real.
Did you know that you can stylize the first frame of your videos with Runway? It's pretty cool. You should check it out. See you later.
So you can completely restyle your live action scenes. You can change the texture, you can change the person, and you can do a video like that probably in like 2 minutes. So it's extremely fast. And even now, this was done like half a year ago, so now it will look even way more realistic. And then the main question I'm usually getting all the time, almost on every client call.
I love it. It's approved. Just hand over 4K ACES CGEXR.
Right? That's my every second call with the client. How we figure it out, the color depth and everything. Well, there are options. One of them was the older one that we use, for example, in this commercial, where I explained that we generated the PBR. So since I had an albedo, there wasn't like a baked lightning. It's still 8-bit, of course, but then you start your project in 16-bit floating point or 32. So once you start adding the specs and stuff like that, suddenly it's keeping you the enough information that the grading can, after when they're moving in the grade and multiplying, they reveal all of the data under the specs. So that was kind of one sheet that we figured out how we can use ACCG for AI and for delivery. Then there is another one that I found is more broad and easier. It's in Nuke. I downloaded those images from Moving Image Arts. Actually, you can look at that because they have a Nuke script for Copycat. And this is what I'm kind of doing like lately. You can take your 8-bit generation from AI, and then you can train Copycat with your 16-bit or 32-bit footage. So it's actually recover the details in your 8-bit AI generated video, and it works pretty well. Like for example, on this image, you see the difference, the original and the recovered. How this works is, you need to have like some probably RedCam or RVCam data for the training. So you actually show the AI what you're trying to achieve. So this is your 8-bit result, but you want to go into this 12 or 16-bit. So it understands that you're working with high dynamic range. You need to train those. And once you have it, then you can just plug, the trained copycat into any generation you have, and it will just swap it into 16-bit. So you can suddenly deliver everything in ACES. Of course, it has cons. It doesn't work perfectly all the time, because it really depends also what you train it on. So if you took, let's say, I have now the scenery, and I will train it with like a person sitting at home, then the AI wouldn't really understand what I want to turn it into. So it will probably make it just gray. So you need to really focus like what data you're feeding. So if I'm using scenery, it's the best to use 16-bit data scenery as well. So it kind of is in the same level, because then, it wouldn't understand that the thing in the back is sun, or that this is clouds. Also, like a lot of people asking, because the AI usually is trained on floating point 16-bit, but the thing is that it's very, very different from the classic data that we're using in film or television. AI doesn't have any HDR content, so when you say 16-bit in AI, it doesn't mean same thing as 16-bit in a video. In AI, it's usually just like a mathematical equation, how you train the model. So, for example, you kind of figure it out that you don't have a gradients, during your generation, or like bad noise, stuff like that. So that's why you increase in the bits in AI, but it's still 8. Which like in video, we have 12 stops, so we have high dynamic range. So they're 16 bits, like a totally different thing. So that's why we cannot really easily change the output into 16-bit. But then there is the other thing, and as I mentioned before, the very important to fine-tune the models. So when you're training your own model, you can always fine-tune it. So then you can bring as another layer to the model that you want to get generation in a 16-bit. But it's not coming from the base model, it's coming from the fine-tuned model. So it's actually taking your output from the big model, changing it into 16-bit, and then it gets you out. So that's kind of the way how you can do it without losing even much quality. And yeah, that's it. Do you have any questions?
Hi there. Do you have any guesses on how Luma AI is delivering high dynamic range images?
Well, good question. I tried actually Topaz, that offering the same function, and it works well too. So I feel it's like a post process, because I found that if you import footage into Topaz, there is a tool that asks you if you want to switch SDR to HDR, and I kind of get good results from it too. So I would say that is a post process.
Awesome. Hi. Very interesting the presentation. Regarding, it's just about how you handle some of the questions around ethics of AI, in the sense of this is a proprietary model from Runway, right? Several.
Right.
And the question is, how do you approach when your clients will say, well, if you have that multitude of shots and plurality of outputs, what is it trained on? And it's not about what is trained on, it's about how do we approach answering that, especially as models generalize, and we're getting now videos that can, like one, for example, like how do you approach when someone asks you about the ethics or what's on the data set?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, uncommon question. So the thing is that we are like a train on like a legally acquired data set, so everything we own. And so we kind of guarantee the client if what they generate is their own and they fully own it, and there is like a no problem for them later. So we kind of guarantee that. So if you like an enterprise client, you have it even guaranteed in your contract.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was curious, you talked about fine-tuning models. Are there ways to fine-tune some of Runway's capabilities to a given project or a shot?
Well, that's the thing, like what we do with enterprise clients, that based on their needs, we kind of talk like how we can figure it out, because most of the time it's not really just about fine-tuning, it's more about to find like a good workflow. Usually they just come show us the project, and my job is to figure it out how it would work like in our VFX pipeline. So for example, they just show us like, okay, this is how we work. We're using Nuke, we're using Houdini, all of that, and we need this. So my job is to figure it out, all of that. And if it's not possible without fine tuning, then it's more like about the conversation, because the fine tuning, it's if you're doing it like on a big model, it's not like a easy thing, because you cannot just do it like for one person. That just doesn't work like that.
I think that's it. Oh, sorry.
So, with the move towards a lot more remote and decentralized studio work that has been going on, with freelancers working remotely and delivering via cloud services or whatever, how do you see the industry adapting with the AI and with, as you guys have mentioned, and the previous speaker mentioned, clients are like, oh no, everything has to stay super secret and you can't use cloud stuff. But there's this constant push in the industry, as he mentioned, the time and the money towards those decentralized models. How do you see that working moving forward with AI and all that?
Well, it's a good question. I think there are two options. One, if you go like with big company, like a Runway, then you can also ask like for secured server. So you have like your secured environment on you, not physically on your server, but for example, it could be AWS that you have. So it has all of those security things that you require. So that's one thing. But then you still don't have an access, right? So then I would suggest, like, if you go seriously to AI, to actually fine tune and work on your own models, which is almost impossible to do locally because it needs so much power. But then the cloud services are already pretty accessible and secured, so you can actually get a server with like a TPN security, and I would train on that, so you are secured. So that's why on all of those projects that I show, like that's been done for the actual studio, I never use any online platform, because I also had it in the NDA, like it cannot leave your servers, it cannot leave the studio.
Yep, thank you.
We got way back. We'll come back up with that.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Newman, visual effects artist, and I was invited here today to talk about how I've been integrating AI into my VFX workflow. So before getting into AI, I'm going to start off by talking about my background in VFX, then I'll share some projects where I began integrating AI into VFX, and finally I'll talk about weaving and how it can expand the possibilities with AI. I'm going to begin with the intro to my demo reel from a few years back before I started using it. Hello, I'm Jesse Newman. I'm a visual effects artist working primarily for my home studio outside of New York City. I do several types of effects work, including compositing, particles, some 3D, UI, motion design, as well as my personal art projects. And it's hard to separate my reel into these different disciplines because there's oftentimes significant overlap between them. So for example, I might do the UI as well as the comp, or I might do the CG as well as the type design. That being said, here are some of my favorites, and I hope you enjoy. So some of my recent projects include work on the Penguin, visual effects for the Penguin, and personal projects have played a major role in my professional development. And the most complex of these is Rebirth of Gaia. This is a project I started for my daughter, depicting her as the Earth Goddess. It's a massive 30K by 10K collage created in After Effects, and it's composed of interwoven vignettes inspired by Greek mythology. So for example, if you look up here in the top left, that little piece right there, if you zoom in, is actually this. It's a nebulaic embryo representing the birth of the universe. Another of the vignettes depicts my daughter as the Earth Goddess meditating as a river. the water running through her and becoming a waterfall. So this project started in 2006, and it's evolved continuously to include all of her siblings. And the 30K by 10K canvas is enormous resolution by today's standards, but practically unimaginable 20 years ago when I was starting this on my laptop. So to make it work, I had to break it down into smaller parts and develop new techniques along the way. And in fact, at one point, Adobe reached out to ask me how I was doing this, why I was using After Effects instead of Photoshop, etc. And looking back, I realized that I've often advanced by overlooking perceived limitations. Not quite knowing what I was supposed to do with the tools became an advantage, freed me to ignore boundaries. And that same mindset has helped me make the shift into AI. So one of my first experiments with AI came while creating visuals for a live breathwork event. Breathwork uses intentional breathing techniques to bring about profound mental and emotional shifts, and this particular event was designed to support military veterans dealing with PTSD. So the timeline was extremely short, and I was asked to create about 30 minutes of visuals to be projected. So I knew that the approach had to be procedural, and I began exploring how AI could expand the possibilities. So I ended up taking an old logo animation I'd created about a decade earlier and reworked it with AI. So I used prompts like ethereal light, transcendence, illumination, lots of abstract words, and kind of let AI figure out how to transform the animation from the cold, bending metal into something that was more abstract and aligned with the breathwork. So building on that, then I went back into After Effects and created additional source elements like an endless kaleidoscope animation. And the key takeaway for me was not only that AI can powerfully reimagine visuals, but that this ability is transferable to any aesthetic. So this is a test I was doing to show a director that we can transform visuals not just profoundly, but also in subtle ways. So for example, if he wanted to make some adjustments to what he was capturing in camera, if he wanted to adjust the ceiling, if he wanted to add cables, etc., everything could be manipulated. This next project was a pitch for a sports network rebrand, and most of the time I am trying to rein AI in, but this was an opportunity to kind of let it, to loosen the leash and let it go. So I had created a bunch of style frames for the pitch that were these futuristic nanotechnology elements. The concept behind it was that our future descendants were coming back and they were kind of tapping into the sports channels, and this was their interface. So I had created these images and then was amazed to find that within seconds I could train it on those images, and I could take the logo, for example, on the left here, and within seconds I had a dimensional futuristic treatment that lived within the same visual language. And then I would create something, for example, on the top here in After Effects, which was like a lower third, a very basic graphic, and using the same process, using the trained material, have it reinterpret it into a new lower third. And it's quite fascinating because there's a lot of control over how much manipulation can happen. So you can, for example, with a piece before when the director showing him the inside of changing the ceiling, etc., we wanted to keep it very similar to what it started with, but in this case, it's essentially just a slider. You can really let AI move in different directions than you are starting with. This project was for a documentary on Gustav Mahler's Symphony of 1000, which is an epic piece about merging the divine and transcendence. And there's a lot of documentation on his thoughts and what he was thinking. He composed this in the early 1900s. So there was a chance to stay true to his vision and to keep it as authentic as possible. It was essentially like making a music video that was 100 years in the making. So one of the climactic shots begins in a stream in the Swiss Alps, which is where he wrote the symphony, and then opens to a vast vista of lakes, each one releasing these spirals of mist. And there was a very specific vision for what each element should look like, and the level of detail needed to communicate the vision, it wasn't possible with just one prompt. So, like many of my other projects, going back to Rebirth of Gaia, I started by just breaking the scene down into smaller parts, and then using AI to fuse the elements together. So the process of creating the spirals was pretty mind-blowing for me. This is the first time I had used live painting with AI. So I could start with very rough shapes and then use AI to reimagine them as these wisps of mist. And the real power came when I realized I could take the screen from After Effects on the left there and use Trapcode Particular to sort of design the exact spirals that I wanted, and then take that and reimagine them with AI. The shot was about 27 seconds long, and AI outputs tend to be much shorter, so I broke it into two main sections. I created a depth pass for each and used direct focus to combine the two shots, and then integrated the spirals into the environment by using Mocha to track them on top of the AI generated plates. So I think this project really illustrates the relationship between VFX and AI, and how it can be a constant passing of the baton between them. And with that, an AI artist who doesn't know VFX is at a disadvantage. And vice versa. I mean, the precision and control that were required to realize this vision demanded that back and forth. AI was really powerful as a renderer, but visual effects was essential to shape it, track it, integrate every element into the scene. So there's a lot of challenges with AI. One of the biggest has been simply keeping track of the workflow. It can be incredibly scattered, and at any given moment, I might have had tabs open for Midjourney, Runway, Clean, Kriya, Sora, VO, Magnifique, etc. And I'd also be bouncing back and forth between Photoshop and Topaz locally. And the sheer quantity of images can be overwhelming. Working with AI, you quickly realize there's a shift from creation to curation. And expanding this way of working to a team can be extremely cumbersome. I have a small AI VFX company called Ember and Ice, and we developed ways to keep things under control. For example, every day we would download the hundreds of images and rate them in Adobe Bridge and organize them by shot and project, and log every single prompt variation, both stills and video, into massive spreadsheets. And it worked, but it was very time consuming and cumbersome. And that led me to my most recent aha moment, which is Weavy. Weavy solves a lot of these challenges. It's a node-based platform for AI workflows, and it visualizes the creative process. Moments after opening up for the first time, I realized that I was starting a new chapter in my AI journey. So this is a quick pre-recorded kind of demo, but basically what I'm doing here is dragging these nodes over the prompt on the left and then an image node on the right. And this is just a very simple prompt. This is a child's bedroom, and you can see that it creates an image. The benefit, though, of working this way is that each AI model will give you a different option. So it benefits you to drag it into each of them, Stable Diffusion, Runway, Kriya, etc. Not Kriya, but in, the ones up here like Minimax, etc. And then you can go through and choose which one you want and kind of go from there. I didn't want to go too much further in this part of the demonstration. I just wanted to show you that it's as simple as taking a prompt and then connecting it to all the different nodes. And if you've used Flame or Nuke, this node-based design feels familiar. But again, unlike traditional node pipelines, the benefit with AI is that each model produces a unique result, so there's even more benefit to this form of structure. So this challenge here was to create an element of a virus in a petri dish. And so I will walk you through the Weavy workflow I used to create this. And one of the key insights from this project was realizing I've been doing particles for decades, and I was blown away, how easy it was to create it and control them. So here's the Weavy workflow for this project, and the end result are these elements here. So I'll walk you back to the beginning of it. So I start off with just a prompt. As the other speakers have alluded to, it's very helpful sometimes to use ChatGPT or one of these other AI to use AI to basically communicate with AI, because essentially you're trying to speak another language. It's like learning German or French. You want to speak AI, so a lot of times I'll use ChatGPT and I'll ask it, what's a good way to communicate the idea that I'm trying to create a Peachtree dish that has some related to biological warfare, etc. So I also had created a separate node, and because I wanted to compare them, I wasn't sure which one was going to work better. So I had these two nodes, and I then had each one of them going into I typically have 9. It doesn't really matter how many, but for me, I used 9 different AI models, and they each gave me different results. Some of them were working better than others, and again, these are all really cool to have generated within the first 30 seconds or so. The way that I work is as I find elements within the flow that are looking better, I kind of pull them to the right, so that when I go back into a setup a week or a month later, or if I'm sharing this with a team member, they kind of know which ones are the best ones. So after creating those stills, I wanted to start seeing how they would turn into video. And this part here is to demonstrate how you can also use the nodes to create really good prompts. So I took the original AI generated prompts that were on the left over here, and you can see that they're flowing into a new node that combines the original prompt with this one here. So this prompt is more specific to the motion, and it's describing, in detail that I want the decaying bacteria to be repulsed by, etc., and magnetized to the edges. So I'm combining that video prompt with the original prompt of the still, and then I'm using another node to enhance it. So there's a lot of power with Weavy, not just in creating the images, but then also with getting really good prompts and combining prompts. So then from here, I had it started generating all the videos. And sort of using the same technique, I would just drag the ones that I like the most over to the right. One thing I wanted to show right here, this part of it, is that one of the nice things about Weavy 2 is that it contains all of your iterations within the icon. So here I had, if you see at the top left there, it says 4 out of 6. This was using VO3 to take the image and based on the prompt to create a video. I ran it 6 different times. In the past, it would be kind of a nightmare to keep track of where each of those 6 are. But here you can kind of just flip through it. That's the third one, go and and then this is, it's just a very easy way to kind of keep it all contained. So yeah, this was basically a breakdown of how I created the element for this Peachtree dish. This was a project for Electra Filmworks. This was an interesting one because on the shoot, the idea was to essentially create they shot these different vignettes of someone at a bank helping potential customers. One of them was buying a house. One of them was a small business owner. One of them was working from home, etc. And the idea was to shoot overhead shots of each of the vignettes to form the logo at the end of the spot. But when they were on set, the ceiling was too low and they couldn't get the camera high enough to get the overhead shots. And so before over-promising, I was pretty confident I could recreate the shots in AI. This kind of one other side note is that the power of doing proof of concepts with AI, because By definition, everything we're doing is going to break new ground. So one of the first things I do is I just do some quick tests, and I was able to create the same vignettes that they had shot in camera from overhead. So this also has some pretty massive implications, I think, for production, because it really frees you up knowing that you can recreate these scenes from different angles, fixing it in post. The other thing that was really kind of powerful about this exploration was realizing that you can use Weavy to make a repeatable system of problem solving. So kind of walking you through the Weavy setup here. So this was like the original shot from set, and the prompt. It was as simple as, and I think I just went to ChatGPT and I said, "What's the best way to say this?" But top down, absolute 90-degree orthographic overhead camera, no perspective or tilt, etc. And it gave me that. And then you can prompt for the video what to kind of emulate the motion that was happening from the other angle. In this case, it didn't really need to match 1-to-1 because it was happening later theoretically in time. But once we had this process worked out, this is like another of the benefits of Weavy, is that you could just take that workflow, duplicate it, and then add your next scene. So in this case, she's sitting in her bedroom, and you can see it's a very rough element that I'm starting with, but I didn't really need it to be final for this process. I could just start with that image using a very similar prompt, give myself an overhead shot, and then turn that into video, and kept doing that for each of the other scenes. So it's a very efficient way to work. Once you figure out one, you can kind of apply it to all the others. This next exploration was I was working with a company to see what can be done using like archival footage and archival photos. In this case, for Al Capone. And the key takeaway with this was you can absolutely breathe new life into these archival elements. And because you can create so much, like I was saying before, it shifts from creation to curation. Because you can create so many elements, this actually has implications for the editorial process as well, because you're not necessarily limited. You don't necessarily have to go, it's not necessarily a linear process going from edit into VFX. You can create a bunch of elements that the editor can then work with. So this process in Weavy starts with the photo. Starts with a photo I grabbed from the internet of Al Capone. I used Stable Diffusion to outpaint it, which means extending the edges left and right. Again, you can see that I'm clicking on the button on the top left to see all the different iterations to pick one. It's nice that it's all self-contained. From there, I scale it up. And I typically, for something like this, I'll have it go into multiple AI models, not knowing which one's going to look best. In this case, Topaz looked better than Magnifique. So then I took that image and then just started playing with creating different camera angles. Overhead shot of the scene, the view from behind toward the camera, the close up of the side of his face. And then you can take those and you can start to combine those elements into, in this case, clean first and last frame. And these are not necessarily going to be in the final cut, but it just is a demonstration of how you can quickly create lots of different elements that the editor can work with. And you can also add audio, and so VO3 does a really good job of taking that prompt of whatever you want it to say, and bringing words into it. So here's some of the limitless B-roll I've got. Like, I was able to provide lots of B-roll for them to play with. So I wanted to just share some general thoughts on Weavy and AI, and why Weavy in particular brings me optimism for VFX artists. So obviously AI has had massive implications for the VFX industry. Pretty much anybody can type in a prompt and generate a pretty picture, but they can't necessarily do what VFX and CG artists do, which is to dissect a scene, think in the pipelines, and refine it. Weavy already aligns with how VFX and CG artists think, and it provides the structure to move past the surface level results to work toward a specific vision, which is essential for client feedback. And why human authorship matters? AI generated work on its own cannot be copyrighted, so human authorship is required. And what qualifies as human authorship is iteration, refinement, creative direction, which makes artists not just aesthetically vital, but legally indispensable. And companies will only back what they can fully own, so the human component is non-negotiable. Weavy's iterative node-based process makes the case clear. It's not a one prompt in, one output out solution. It gives you a very quick snapshot of the whole process. Scaling with teams. For years, there's been a huge gap between what AI can do and what teams can do with it. Handoffs were messy and complicated, but with Weavy, the workflows are not just visible, but they're extremely easy to share. One link gives full access to the process and the assets. So, for example, I've been using After Effects and Flame for decades now, and I'm very familiar with collecting files and trying to get the assets to somebody else who's working on the project. With Weavy, it's as simple as just taking a URL and you can text it to somebody else or email it. They step right into your setup. They have all the assets self-contained. And the way I see Weavy is like as a foundation, in a similar way to how After Effects or Flame operate with plugins. I see I see Weavy as like the foundation, and each of the AI models as a plugin. And as the AI models continue to get better and evolve, it's as simple as just dragging like a new node into your flow. You don't need to relearn where what the project structure is going to be, where the assets live, how to download assets, etc. This right here is just a real quick demonstration of how you can actually share a setup. So say you've got, this is a setup from a personal project I've been working on, and if I wanted to share it with somebody else, it's just you click the share button on the top right, and you copy the link, and that's it. And you paste it. So, so as far as getting started with Weavy, I think the best way is to just jump right in. If you go to their site at the very top there, they've got a tutorials button, and that is it brings you directly to their YouTube tutorials. Some of them are maybe 2 or 3 minutes, so it's very easily digestible. They also have next to the tutorials button, Workspace, workflow library. And those I think are almost more powerful than tutorials, because you can just take these preset workflows and copy them to your setups and just start manipulating them using your own elements. Every Monday, there's weekly onboarding sessions with Weavy, and there's a robust Discord hub for direct support, sharing workflows, etc. So, a final thought is that AI allows us to visualize ideas in ways that have never been possible before. It's a tide that lifts all boats, and everybody has leveled up, and now there's a new baseline. So it can feel definitely unsettling, because anybody can jump into Midjourney and make something eye-catching. But I really feel like the VFX artists have a true advantage, because in my experience, before I started getting to AI too much, I would see people generating things, and it felt like they leapfrogged me. They were able to create something beautiful, but the reality is that everybody has moved up, and because you can take these raw ideas and build upon them using tools like VV to create structured workflows, and then refining them in Nuke and After Effects and Flame with tracking and depth maps and compositing to create production-ready visuals. So the way I see it, there's no reason to wait if you haven't gotten into it, and I encourage you to go for it. Thank you. And also, here's a QR code provided by Weaving for some bonus credits, etc. Thanks.
Any questions?
Just generally speaking, how does the whole credits work, or like how many credits does it take to get results, or if you do 9 different versions, and how does all that stuff stack up and come together?
So the 9 different versions is the ones that I use. They total 57 credits, which is about 50 cents.
Do you already have in place enterprise licensing models for, well, specifically schools? Traditionally, a lot of these tools, they haven't scaled that way yet, so we have to do individual licensing per student email, and it's really time consuming and very cumbersome. So have you thought about that? Has Weavy thought about that?
To be quite honest, I don't actually work with Weavy. I just love Weavy. And I had reached out to them. I've been a big fan of them. I've been telling them I think I understand their product better than they do as far as how amazing it is. So I don't really know a lot of that.
Oh, right, she's sitting right here.
She is
Question for her.
No, Jesse is like, he's been with us from the beginning, and like he's a better speaker than, one of our workers. So it's amazing. Thank you, Jesse. And further questions, yes, we have a dedicated enterprise account and institute educational custom based on needs, and we can discuss it after, give you all the details.
So, and this might be a question for you as well. With Weavy, how do you guys handle censorship? Because I've spoken with a few industry. I work with a cloud company, so we've had conversations with a few artists and a few producers who they run into problems with, especially a lot of the AI models like Veo and those, where they are heavily censored. You cannot have it do anything violent. You cannot have it do anything quote unquote NSFW. And as anyone who works and has worked in the industry knows, those are staple scenes and staple parts of the visual effects industry. You've got scenes where you might have Daenerys walking out of a fire naked. If you can't generate that, then the model, a lot of people have said the model is useless. The software and the tool is useless because it doesn't let them do what they need to do. Is that something that has been addressed with Weavy, or is that something that is still kind of beholden to the services like Veo and those which are being utilized?
I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but the way I see it is that each of the models has their own, and so what I've found is when I'm using a prompt, this isn't necessarily exactly what you're, as far as like someone naked on fire, but if I'm doing something for a celebrity where I wanted somebody to say their name, I would have to go around it by kind of spelling it out phonetically. Obviously, it's not the same thing as someone being on fire, but what I found is that some of the models are easier and more, some of them are more restrictive, some of them are a lot looser. But I don't know, as far as the way I understand Weavy is that they don't actually, it's more that they provide the models to you, but they're not, I don't know that they necessarily have control over how much is being censored from them, but I don't know exactly.
Jesse is right, but in addition, and I think that Jesse didn't show it in these specific use cases, but Weavy is not only like models agnostic, it combines also editing tools. So you have a compositor that you can edit on it, and we are planning to add some features for the video editor. So yeah, you are there are some limitations of the models, but you can import your own scene and work with AI models and combine it into your design machine in some way. So it's kind of manipulation that you can do on these limitations.
Last one.
Earlier, you mentioned concepts such as creation and curation, and furthermore, that Weavy addresses the relationship between the two. What's your definition of these concepts?
Well, when I say creation, in the sense that if I wanted to create like an image for, let's just say, like the sports rebrand, for example, it might take me a couple days to make something really nice looking that was, start off with 3D and design it, light it, and everything. But now you can just iterate, and you can have 1,000 beautiful images in a day. So when I'm talking about creation, I'm talking about the relationship between the quantity that you can create and then how important it becomes to curate it, because you, in my experience, don't want to show a client like here's 100 different versions of it. You want to actually go through and have done a lot of the work ahead of time to decide which ones you want to show. So but within Weavy, where I find this super helpful is that for each of the nodes, it's an icon, and it has all of the previous iterations recorded within it. You can go back and forth. Previously, before I started using Weavy several months ago, I would have all those iterations just in folders on my computer, and then I'd have to use an Adobe Bridge, and I'd have to rank each one, etc. And so in that sense, for me, Weavy solved that issue of curating all the images, because then I can go and just choose whichever one I like the most and put that as the top icon, as the top image from which I branch off into other parts of the workflow. Does that answer the question? Yes. Yeah, curating them in the sense of deciding which ones you would want to hold on to, which ones are the most valuable, because you've got so many now that in the past, I might only, if I was working on a complicated visual for a client to show them, even as a style frame, I might only, after a couple days, only have one frame. But now I can have endless frames. So curating in the sense that on that spectrum, it's kind of shifted toward, okay, now it's not an issue of how many frames. You created limitless frames. So now there's really an emphasis on, which ones are the best. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
One more.
We'll do some more after the panel, but we need a break for now. Sorry.
Seats. We're gonna start the panel section of today. My name is Ross Shane. I'm on the board of the VFX Society in New York. Thanks so much for coming. I also just wanted to say a big thanks to Sam O'Hara, who did a lot of the organization and also special thanks to the sponsors, obviously, to Weavy and Topaz and the SVA. So just a really quick context, actually a question. Who here is in the VS? All right, cool. And who is not? Welcome. Who here is using AI regularly in their workflow? Pretty good. Okay. So the goal of this panel is to talk to people who are using AI, kind of dive a little bit more into the behind the scenes of the tools. I think we'll also be talking about some maybe more difficult questions in legality, copyright. None of us are lawyers, obviously. So I think, we'll just kind of get into the behind the scenes. Everyone saw Andy and Yuri and Jesse's presentations. Awesome guys, job. Awesome. Just so the level field, the field is a little bit level, I just want to introduce some of our other guests here. So Randy Little down here at the end, he's a VFX soup, and I'll let you kind of introduce yourself a little bit, but VFX soup has done a lot of episodic VFX supervision, right?
Yeah, mostly episodic. I started life out as a still photographer in New York. And then 9/11 did that. And then because of the type of photography I was doing, I ended up started doing compositing. And then when people found out that I had experience on set and dealing with all the departments and all that good stuff, they started sending me to set because I knew how to communicate with makeup and wardrobe and everybody else and ask them for things and yeah. And then from then it just kept going, and then I won an Emmy for Gotham. And then for the past few years I've been mostly working in Philadelphia on M. Night stuff.
Very cool. You just want to share a little bit, how are you using AI in your kind of role there these days?
I use a thing called Crew AI, which is kind of along the lines of Anthropic, which we'll talk about, which makes agents, and I use it so I'll parse the script. I'm not going to let the AI do that for me because then I don't really know what the script says. But I'll go in and mark it up and put tags, and then let the AI parse that into a database that also creates prompts that I can then make little thumbnails with. And for me, who's slightly dyslexic, it's obviously, and a lot of us here are clearly visual people, it's a lot easier for me to scan through and look for my thumbnail of the shot than to be reading each line. Yeah. Oh, that's the one I was looking for. Okay, now I remember where it's at. And so I use, like I said, it's called Crew AI, and it's kind of a super techie thing. It makes you write code. But if you can vibe code, which means ask AI what to code, you can also work your way through it because you're not, usually not making overly, superly complex agents.
Very cool. Who here in the audience is vibe coding? Very cool. Okay. Gonna add vibe coding to Weavy, and then you're like all set. Okay. And our other guest that just to introduce is John Anderson, who's a kind of storied VFX exec and artist. I'll let you tell because there's too many things you've done.
Well, thank you. Hi, I'm John Anderson. My start was in theater, moved to physical production, worked on a film called Seven that David Fincher directed, and realized visual effects is coming. And that was in 1995. I joined Digital Domain, which was a James Cameron, Scott Ross company, and immediately had a task to oversee the build out of all of the motion control equipment for Fifth Element, Dante's Peak, and Titanic. That was the first 6 months of my life, a lot of sleepless nights. And then I jumped into getting back. I stayed there for 14 years, saw the creation of Nuke, all these other things, got out of there after Benjamin Button and Tron Legacy, and moved to the show side where I worked for different studios, and then I ended up at Netflix for the past almost 6 years, and here I am.
Very cool. And are you using any of these tools in your process? I know you're very engaged when you're working with vendors, but as far as personally?
I don't have the time to professionally to deal with it. I have to allow others to lead and be the experts in their field. I use ChatGPT. That's how I got started. I went, oh my God. And then realized that there's a lot of other things. I've looked at N8N to create AI agents and things like that, where I've quickly realized I should leave that to someone else. But it's fun to dabble with. I'm an old still photographer, sports photographer before I got into this business. And, so I love actually seeing the imagery that's being created. However, I have had projects where I've had to be a little more hands-on with the oversight, and we were using it to build character dev, where we were trying to come up with a very on the studio level. You're sometimes handed a show that needs to start right away because all the stars and the moons have aligned, and you're going to lose actor availability or whatever, and so you jump in very quickly and try to get something going. Because you're only 12 weeks out, you still don't have a CG character developed. So that is where AI can come in and save the day with qualified artists, character developers who have master eye of what you're trying to achieve, and then it's all on the prompts and the rest, trying to secure that with some proprietary tools that other vendors are bringing and putting together to the table to not only train their artists but also to bring more control over each gen.
Very cool. Yeah, I think just through the presentations and as we talk even more, it's like the visual effects artists, my impression, but agreeing with what Jesse kind of said at the end of yours presentation, is that people in this room, like we've all spent our careers thinking about technology and art in that intersection. And I actually think that people like us are very, very well situated in a really great position to be exploiting and taking advantage of this technology.
Yeah, you're looking at me. Absolutely. My daughters are art history majors, and walking through the museum and understanding the symbolism in a painting and the reason a tapestry has a story that it's being told, or a master work, and the techniques that are used. It's amazing to look at their eyes through their eyes as it is Jesse's, and many other amazing artists sitting in this room that you bring a lot to the table, a lot of expertise. I love seeing. My role as a studio executive was to make sure that the vision of the director is getting up on screen.
Let's talk a little bit about the tools themselves, and then we'll kind of as we go, we'll kind of get into some of the deeper questions. But we saw these great demos from all these guys. Andy showed some really great sort of like things that might have been paint or tracking, cleanup. I'm just curious, like, kind of show our hands, or we can go, as far as the state of the tools, the reality of where we are right now, because we can see these demos and we can go home and we can start prompting, and we don't necessarily get these really quick results. So, like, if I say roto tracking cleanup, what is the reality? I'll start with Andy. What is the reality of using these tools effectively?
It kind of varies from tool to tool, and the best advice I can give to anybody is try the tools out. Even sometimes tools from the same vendor give you different results based on how the models are implemented. But I think what I've found so far is that they're really good at getting you to a point, and sometimes that's all you need. And so always look at the work that you're about to do with a critical eye, and if it's something that doesn't require pixel accurate roto around every strand of hair, then don't do that. And the same thing goes for tracking and cleanup. All these tools have their strengths and a threshold. And so the quicker you can get up to speed on those, the more value you get out of using the tools.
Yuri, what's your take on it, on those subjects?
Well, specifically for the roto?
Just roto, tracking, cleanup. I'm kind of generalizing those kind of tasks that are so important in the behind the scenes cleaning up, invisible effects, all these kind of tasks?
Well, for the cleanup, I feel if you're doing it purely with AI, it's about you get a good result or you get a bad result. There's usually nothing in between. And if you get a bad result, it's really hard to fix it manually. For Roto, it got way better. I was, for example, experimenting with segment anything from Meta. It's really powerful. You can also fine tune it yourself because you have an open weight. So it's worth it that you kind of open the model and train a bit more so you can get like a more clarity on the edges and stuff like that. So that's getting better. And the tracking, I don't really have like a good experience with like the classic tracking that we used to because it's easy to like a 3D track the AI shot, but you're using like a different tricks, which is for example depth pass, normal pass, and line art pass. So like a kind of edge detect thing. So the model analyze the image by the lines, but it doesn't give you really the data for the camera, so you cannot import it to Maya and have the proper movement that you get to. So what I'm usually doing when I need to implement like a 3D model and I have a camera made in Maya, I let render it from Maya, and then I just like I take the empty scene and the depth pass and give it like to AI to analyze it itself. And usually it matches like a really well. Just you need to do those two steps and it works really, really well.
As far as right now you're working for Runway, but you were working on feature films, right?
Yes.
And obviously it's a lot different creating demos from Runway than creating a feature film where you have
Oh yeah, it's totally different. Yes. So like for the feature films, right? As I said before, like the clients need like the model to have them locally. It has to be secured. They cannot just upload plates wherever they want. So they were more interested to run everything locally to prepare like the local solution for them. Even they get a like a servers like a cloud but themselves, so it was secured. And I was also working. I'm still working on those. I am helping to actually localize those things, and they can. It's a pipeline thing. So there's actually they can do the project. So usually I'm stepping in the pre-production phase. I kind of show them like the pros and cons, and then they decide on their side if is it useful for the project or not. Usually they find it is, but it's always balanced.
Ross, could I add something to
Please. This is a dialogue, and just anyone wants to jump in.
A couple of real world examples are like if I'm doing cleanup and whatever the tool is can't completely remove the object, maybe it'll remove the first frame and the last frame or 3 keyframes, and then you find some way to animate between those, and now you've used the AI or the ML to get you as far as it can get you, and then you maybe use another tool to get it over the finish line.
Yeah, my analogy personally would be, you guys might know that I'm like the Mocha guy, but using Mocha, for you would use it for some of the sections, but for hair or something like that, you would get into more, manual work. So maybe there's sort of analogy there of using it on sections.
Yeah. Or like the new latest version of Synthesize, which I showed. I use it for 3D tracking. They really don't have an AI model or tool that will solve everything, but if you want to quickly eliminate things from the solve, it'll use segmentation and find things and immediately remove them. And then once you have a camera track, if you need an object track, you can get very close right now with AI or with their ML tools just to kind of help you along the way. So it always seems to me to be like a give and take. And again, like I said before, understanding the capabilities of all the components.
Going down the path a little bit deeper into tools, I think we all sort of can see that the 2D solutions, there's lots of great, it's really, we're seeing this, some of those tasks made a lot easier, a lot more efficient. As far as the 3D, what's your guys' take on, do we have the latitude? Are we getting 3D results, 3D textures, tessellations, all the different terms you want to use to actually, does anyone have an opinion or have any of you guys played with these kind of concepts?
Yeah, I can start. So I'm utilizing 3D actually a lot. It's very useful. One thing is Gaussian splatting. Probably you heard about that. At NYU, we did also a test with volumetric capture. So you actually scan, for example, the character, and then you remake the Gaussian splat of the character, but the video one, so everything is moving. You just import it into Unreal Engine. You have like a real-time Everything is real time. You can relight it. You can compose the person into the scene. So that's very, very powerful workflow. In the studios, we've been using it for scanning the set. So, usually as a VFX soup, you come on set doing photos, but now you can actually scan the whole set and get a Gaussian splat. So then, the new artist can import it so they have a layout of the whole set, which makes the things way easier and everything looks already nice, even if it's a point cloud. And then the other thing that we're using is it's called image to 3D. And that you use, for example, 1 up to 4 images of your object, and you generate the 3D object. It's really powerful. It's getting way better. Now you can get it even with the textures. And then you lay out the scene like in any 3D software you want. Then you save like so much time, and then you can use the style transfer to even push it into the reality.
Yeah, so maybe the quality of the actual model that we're getting is not like the same that you're going to get out of Houdini, but we could take that model, bring it into Houdini,
Exactly, yes.
and then do a further pass of a style transfer pass becomes almost like a new Uber 3D pass.
It's gonna make it beautiful, but then, right?
Yeah. And then these diffusion models have gotten pretty advanced right now. So like even Topaz or Magnifique, has a model where we can take a very high rendered 3D model and actually add even more detail to that.
Well, there's also like Onion 3D 2.1, which you can bring in the model and have it UV map it and retexture it, and then just kick back out the same exact model. So
Well,
that's
I'm not aware of that, but yeah, I mean, there's so many tools, and maybe this is just a question, for everyone here is like, how do you keep up, like on all this development? There's a new model every single day. There's a new announcement every single day, right?
I can go first on that one. I'm relying on the vendor to point us to what they can do, and based on that, I'm looking for the confidence that they can do it, and the history that I've potentially had with them, or the trust that we can give them that they're going to deliver, right? That it's incredibly important. With this, new kind of road of so much to choose from, there's maybe a hybrid mix of traditional and leaning towards AI, right? And that can be part of the pipeline for a vendor. It can be part of the tools and the resources that an artist is using. And that to me is like, I need to know that I can get this show delivered with what we all intended to deliver. You can't compromise, right? And so that it's a real unknown right now for how much does it cost? How are we bidding it? What happens when we get stuck and what we thought would work isn't working? Is that an additional cost? When do we pivot and say, gosh, we need to go back to the traditional way to make this? But with the tools that are out there, every week is a new week with either a new version or a new competitor making these tools, it seems. And that's where we're relying on everyone to guide. The studio is an end user, right? Or they're the copyright holder, whether it's a production company, a studio, and they're looking to make this product for a budget.
And on the artist side, Jesse, like where are you getting your info?
Well, I was going to say that I think that's one of the advantages of Weavy, again, having the node-based system, because you can have a workflow developed. And for example, when Nano Banana came out, what I was showing earlier with Al Capone, I had done that before Nano Banana came out, but then when I was preparing for this just yesterday, when I went back into the setup and I just dragged Nano Banana and I switched out what I had there before. So everything about the setup was the same, except for I dropped Nano Banana to say, show me an overhead shot, show me a shot from behind his head. So for me, working in a node-based system really makes it much easier to kind of go with the flow as these things get introduced every week, because you don't need to relearn something. And also just wanted to add that speaking about 3D, I haven't used it in the same way that maybe other people have used it up here, but within Weavy there's a 3D node, and so you can say you've got an image that you've generated, you can turn that into a 3D model, and you've got several to choose from, and then you can take that node and have it pipe it into like a compositor node, and it's all real time after it creates the model, where you can rotate it within the little icon that I was showing earlier. You can rotate the position and zoom in and out, and it updates in real time with the compositor. So it's a new way of using 3D. It allows you to kind of block out the shapes. The quality of it is probably not anywhere near like production ready for, however, I don't know enough about 3D in particular to know exactly, the meshes and that sort of thing. But as far as real world, being able to use it in getting a shot done, I use it pretty often, where I'll just create a 3D model within Weavy, and I'll place it within a scene, and then I can use an AI to reinterpret that output as a photorealistic.
Right, your Al Capone example, you could have a little 3D kind of low res Al Capone, and you're looking at him from different angles.
Trees. Style transfer trees.
Yeah. So you can start with something super rough, and then you can just use AI essentially as a renderer.
Maybe we can talk, unless John, you want.
I was going to follow up.
Yeah, please.
On the other thing with having control is something that's really important. If you are if you are a character designer, creature designer, and you're coming up with 1,500 iterations in 3 minutes, then we need someone to distill that down to the 10 good ones, right? But it's not just about the 10 good ones out of that bunch. It's about being able to say, you know what, director likes these legs, let's leave the legs alone. Let's now just start working on the upper torso. Let's just focus on the head, but I want to see those legs. And so as the tools are evolving, they're going to start having those parameters that you can set and design. Maybe some vendors already have done that proprietarily with a user interface. Maybe they're also bringing people together saying, you know what, I would love to just have a checkbox or a slider. Here's the prompts that we want to use for this show, but this show has another set of prompts. And so that way you're catching up to speed, and you're able to train your artists that are coming into your house, because we're becoming more of a nomadic experience of remote workers that are going to work for multiple vendors in their lifetime, and you may be going back and forth. So the idea is, how can you bring those artists into your pipeline without having to train them and have fewer ramp up hours? So I think this, as we see the tools evolve for use, there's that, and then there's the workflow, and what you have napkin sketches into storyboards and story reels into previs. You shoot it, you have post viz, but when you're in post, what are you doing with a comedy? You want a character to play it 10 different ways, but it's a CG character. You have a voice recorded, but you could, maybe or maybe not, but you have a proxy, you have an edit, you have live action, you're cutting that together. So there's going to be a workflow where you're going to want to see artists able to quickly give you a concept and then take that scene file and deliver it to a vendor that's going to do the high res work, and with their character animators that have the expertise to dial in the nuances of the character. And that's where I see that progressing now.
So, yeah, you want
I just wanted to share that a resource that I've been using to kind of keep up on the latest is a newsletter from a Substack. It's Dan B. Goldman, Goldman. What's that? Oh, yeah. Cool. Shout out. It's called Today in Generative Media, and it's great. Yeah, it's great. And you get a weekend edition too.
And how many people are you following on LinkedIn who are posting, I did this in 5 minutes? No.
None.
Yeah, there you go. A couple of things, maybe we can kind of move the conversation a little bit into pipeline, and we talked about like running locally versus running, a studio that is locked down, air gapped. That air gapped studio doesn't have the luxury of installing a new model every single day, right? What are you guys thinking of? Just like, what are the pain points to scale this kind of work? I don't know. Randy, do you want to jump in here?
In terms of how they gonna deal with the models changing constantly? I think they have an issue with making. I think there's an issue with, we have a lot of Chinese models locally that are not clean and are likely to be banned from the country because they're completely not clean, and let alone all the lawsuits that are going down. And
So when you say clean, you're talking about a data set that's corrupted with
scraping,
private proprietary or
anything that's copyrighted based on the Anthropic settlement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is everyone aware of this Anthropic settlement that happened? Randy, you just want to kind of just give a really quick explanation of that? That would be great.
Anthropic was sued by a guild of writers and publishers, and instead of going to court and potentially being fined $150,000 a book for 465,000 books, they settled for $3,000 a book and agreed to remove the data from their models as much as they can remove the data from their models, which they can't, and agreed that any future models won't be trained with that data. They settled for the largest copyright infringement settlement in history, $1.5 billion. That makes everybody else's lawsuit dangerous. It opens up a lot of liability, and until that stuff's worked out, there's a lot of unknowns. It's not that it won't be resolved and things will move forward eventually, but right now it's
there's a lot of unknowns.
There's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that Disney has lawsuits out against Midjourney and against MinMax, Hollywood. I don't know how you say that, but and there's multiple lawsuits happening. John, you were at
Yeah, let me follow up
please.
with that as well, because there's another good point within that settlement. The books that were pirated is what's getting punished. The books they bought are allowed to move forward without being part of that settlement. And so that's an interesting, precedent that's being set. If you look at how to use this practically, and I want to cover a camera hole on a movie set. We have a camera looking through a wall. It's a hole. We need to cover it up. Art department's going to give me a poster. So they go and get that poster that they're, showing us to put up on the wall. I need to know what the copyright is. I need to know, who the ownership. I need to know if it is something that is a stock photo or a poster that they've purchased, or if it is AI. What prompts do they use to come up with that? Is it legal for us to use? And then if it is, and let's say it can't get a copyright because it's all AI, then that is open to anybody to use. Anybody on the internet can take that poster and go, oh, that's a cool poster. I'm gonna make a t-shirt of that. The studio has no rights to stop them because they don't have copyright. Production company, the copyright holder of the product, they can't stop that. So that's where what Jesse was talking about is human authorship, and that's what we want to see. We want to see people working and putting this together, making choices that are right for the set, the show, the tone of the movie at that time, and that's what's important with the human authorship portion of it, trying to get that copyright.
in human authorship doesn't mean that you prompted it, control netted it, Laura'd it, did it whatever you wanted in Comfy and then push run. They don't count that. And they just declined the copyright of the you pointed this out, the I don't remember her name.
The comic book.
Yeah, the comic book where she had documented all that she had done in her prompts and everything to create the work, and the copyright office said, no, you pushed render and a machine made it. You didn't make that. You just art directed it.
That's where the copyright office revoked the copyright, because the way they submitted it is, here's our work. And they came back and said, hang on a second, you actually created the story with a human, you did the layout graphically as a human, but the graphics inside that were all done through AI. And so that was something that they reversed their patent and only gave a partial or copyright. Sorry.
I saw or heard a discussion about copyright and the copyright issues with AI, and this framed this mess with such clarity for me that it was on a podcast, and the host said that copyright law in America is so antiquated that all it really means is you're not allowed to make a copy, right? And if you think about it, moving a file from disk into memory is making a copy of it. And so if that's the threshold for violating copyright law, I'm gonna let bigger minds than me figure this out. You know, like that really, wow, there are gonna be some epic lawsuits as they try to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that by the time the lawsuits are settled,
I think
there's years behind.
To watch this space, right? And I think if you are the ultimate holder of the copyright for the film or the TV series or whatever it is, I think that's that you need to be mindful of the investment that you've made. So
Yeah, I mean, how many Star Wars fan films, Harry Potter, Star Trek, all these kind of content has been, and you can, in any of these platforms, you can say, give me something that looks like a known character, right? But that known character is kind of out in the ether. It's not necessarily even the Disney version of that character. It's some fan's version of that character.
Well, what happens in Europe where they just passed a law saying anything made with AI has to be labeled clearly? You're going to have a watermark in the bottom of your movie?
I have no idea.
It's quite possible.
There's a market there for AI watermark design.
Truthfully, in journalism, I'd love that. Or the reels that I'm watching on social media. I would love to know that they're AI. Is it right for TV and a movie? I don't know.
But that's the
Maybe it's a card that pops up in the beginning that says it warns you of strobing, flashing lights. Maybe it's something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the this. You're right. The laws, they're
the laws are all over the place, and well, we're not going to get political here, I think, but yeah, no, I consult with Topaz actually, and I talked to people in documentary journalism, and they're very, very concerned that archival footage can be processed these days, or what Al Capone. There you go. And they're very concerned whether a film should be labeled or not.
And can I speak to that? Because I had an experience on Frosted. It was one of the films, and there's a scene that Jerry Seinfeld has Johnny Carson talking and Ed McMahon. And we had two actors play that part. And we gave them parameters of, not to move their head too much and all that kind of stuff, right? Because back then, when we lost an eye or, didn't see 2 years and had a hard time tracking it. But we hired two actors to portray the position. We had to license historical footage and get permission to use the characters. And then we had artists build. So it actually created more jobs. I'm just saying, that was back then, and that could change. But give this some time, and we're going to see some amazing work come out of your brains that help tell amazing stories, or not so amazing stories, but they're better for it because of you. And that is really something that we're seeing
evolve. The types of stories that will be tell, and the problems will be able to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to sound like a naysayer. It's just more that, like, right now, in this time frame today, we just have uncertainty.
100%, and I think everyone in this room would echo those feelings, which is basically like, we don't know exactly how this is going to play out in this next year, 2 years. We don't know, right?
All the requests I've gotten to incorporate AI into commercial visual effects have come from two camps. It's either creative, someone wants to come up with a visual or a way of telling the story visually that has not been done before, right? Which is great. That's how I got into this business, right? But the vast majority of the requests that come down for, hey, can we use AI for this, is just a code for saying, is there some way to do this cheap? That's it, And so I think until we kind of weed out the reality from the hype as to whether or not we can do this cheap, or whether there's technical limitations, legal limitations, whatever, it's going to be a mess until we get to that point where, these are amazing tools to help more people tell amazing stories in ways that were never.
As an independent artist who works for themselves, say Jesse, do you feel obligated to tell your clients that you're using an AI tool?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. My main client right now is hired me to develop their internal AI department, so they're aware of AI.
What do you tell them?
and also, do you want to answer?
Well, no, I'll just say that. So yeah, I'm very open about it, and it's one of the first things I'll, just want to make sure. But it's at this point, it's people know that I use AI, and sometimes there's a request to use even within Weavy certain models, that are okay with their legal department, but yeah, it's very.
Yeah, I'm open with the clients as well. I ask just in case there is some either typically it's also like the larger the client, the more of a developed AI policy they seem to have, right? So to find out is this allowed, yes or no? Do they have preferred vendors or partners where all the data has been vetted? And then there's like an education gap too, because I've asked, like, one of my clients, is it okay if I use an AI tool? I think absolutely not. And then I would say, well, it's built into Nuke, and they'll go, oh yeah, well, Nuke you can use. That's fine. Not understanding.
It's an education thing.
Yeah. So rather than, I know this is a popular refrain for me after doing this for so long. Like, the last thing that I want to have happen is 6 months after I've delivered a job, get a call or an email of just like, we're screwed because you use something that you're not allowed to use. Right. So I don't know that all the E&O insurance in the world is caught up with this.
And John,
that's right. Transparency is important.
And Netflix released, big documentation.
That's right. Yeah, Netflix has released that, and they also have a help center that also delves into everything, color and all these other things, camera settings, and what they'll allow and not allow, that kind of stuff. Check it out. It's up to the public. It's the Netflix Help Center. There's another important aspect to all of this, which is read your contracts. Make sure, if you're an individual or if you're a vendor, or the studio has expectations, they have also lots of pressure from outside that may be watching this space as well and looking at accounts. So they need to know if you're touching it, and most likely they will be able to help guide you with what prompts to stay away from and things like that. Because there's certain limitations that can trigger legal things that you want to stay away from, and so it's just good to know that as part of your business.
Can I have a question for John? Part of those guidelines was public perception, the concern about public perception.
I can't speak to that.
Oh, okay.
I didn't read that part.
Yeah, because it's part of the guidelines speak to concern about public perception and the use of AI.
I don't know what they're after with that, but I'm sure that, it's important to the brand to make sure that they are probably being ethical, and it's honest and forthright, that kind of thing that they want to make sure. you know, it is a studio I believed in and worked for many years, and I feel that it is something that they always wanted to support the artist. So maybe that's where they're going. But I'm just
Yeah,
no, I'm speculating.
This
I
concept
wasn't
of
part of writing that.
No. But I didn't.
the concept of public perception is actually very interesting in context to the visual effects society. And maybe this is the next panel, and there's gonna be a little bit more industry, future industry, and there's some really smart people. Perception of visual effects, but we have people in Hollywood now basically saying no VFX were used on this film, right? So you can sort of see why Netflix, it might be, the big corporations are sort of backing off or trying to play it both ways, right? There's something.
I was just gonna add, as far as like the contract, things like that. As a freelancer, anytime I work for a new vendor, I'm usually asked to sign something. Typically it's boilerplate. Lots of times it's NDA centric, but I have seen in their language about AI, and some of it is about using a tool, and the other is that you, by signing this, you grant the company you're working for license to take whatever you've made and use it to train some future AI tool, whether they know what that means or not. It could just be boilerplate, but it's just something to look out for, because if part of what you're doing is a before and after, if you're doing retouch or cleanup or whatever, you've essentially handed this vendor a data set that they can use to, I'm getting slightly hyperbolic, but only slightly, to train a model that can do the retouch and cleanup the way that you do it.
That falls into your privacy, agreements that you're signing on, every social media. And there's a case with still photographers who've been using a media shuttle, and if that's a company, it's not what I'm trying to say. But the privacy agreement allows the data mining of your content, even though you're just using it to shuttle to another person. You should definitely read your legal contract.
Oh, all those like filters on whatever that make you look older.
Yeah.
We're all trained on people uploading pictures of themselves, when they were kids, on Facebook or whatever, and you've created a data set of how the person changes over 20 years.
So I think we're in a new world.
Yeah.
Something that we didn't have to think about, but we're now faced to pay a little bit more attention to.
Absolutely. We're kind of getting sort of pressed for time a little bit, so I have one more question, and I'd like to kind of go down the list, or go down the line, and let's get Gary back involved here in this conversation. Super impressed by your presentation, and this question is going to be for everyone. It's like, where do you see this going in the next year to 2 years, and where do you want it to go? Well, what's the future of AI for VFX?
Well, where I see it goes is that for sure it'll open more door for creative people. That now, well, let's say 2 years ago you could not make a sci-fi movie, and suddenly you can. So in a year, I see it is just gonna be better. It will give you more control. The quality of it will be better. Also, it will become more agentic. So that means it will be more like your colleague that you will be chatting with, and it doesn't matter if you're gonna edit the video, if you're gonna create a game, but you just give it a prompt and then you're conversating about it, and until you get your final result. And that's also like where I would like it to go, because then it again gives you more control over the output, and I would like to see it more that we can use those things more locally, not on the cloud. Because imagine you start a project, you're doing a film that usually takes like 1 year in the VFX, and then the company shut down, and you're in the middle of the project. What are you gonna do? And you've been counting on all of the tech, and they don't care about you. You're just like one studio. So that's why I'm still like talking about the local use of that, because even for a studio like Netflix, it'll be difficult to stop like in the middle, and then you don't have a replacement, or the tool giving like a specific result that you don't get anywhere else.
Andy.
I'm gonna romanticize this a little bit, but like, I love what I do for a living, and I put images together and I solve problems, and I talk to my clients, and am part of their creative process. And so anything that can help me kind of bridge that gap between what's in their head and what's in mine is wonderful. Anything that can make me more efficient, anything that can afford me more opportunity to do the part of the job that I love and not necessarily the part that I have to do in order to do this. So I'm hopeful that I said a few minutes ago that we're going to get there. It'll make all the artists in the room more artisans, I think, because you'll be able to tap into disciplines that maybe you didn't have as deep of a well of experience with. But we'll see how we get there. It's going to be a bumpy road, I think, to get to that place.
It's fascinating. It's a collaborative art. When you're filming a show, you have an expert in every department. I don't think one person can and should be all of that. I think, and what I truly hope in the future is that you're still going to hire someone to light the set. You're still going to hire someone to block the actors and the framing of the camera. You're still going to bring in costume design and set deck and things like that. But so I do see that as a collaborative art form still surviving. You may have less people that you're dealing with to get to the point where you can deliver it to completion. However, I think that in the future, it's about screens. Are we going to have more spheres? That's a 16K image. You were done with an 8K image on an LED wall for a concert, right? Which is huge and a lot of work. The sphere is 16K, much wider field of view. And we're going to start seeing that differently. We're going to start seeing as these mega data centers come online, the ability to not be just a passive experience, but an immersive experience. Someone where you're from, the East Coast maybe, is looking at different cities, but you over there from the West Coast, you're looking at beaches and sunsets, and it's going to know that, and it's going to be able. You're going to be able to play a game. You're going to be able to immerse yourself in a story that could potentially be adjusted on the fly, because of your data that's being tracked. And so I think that is something that is in the future.
I think in the short term, there's going to be a lot more AI integration into the products that we already use, like with After Effects and Flame. And I also think there's going to be a new kind of subset of jobs that are created within visual effects companies where it's like AI departments. So you might be asked, do you use Weavy, do you use Comfy, do you use this or that? Because that makes the onboarding process easier if someone already has that basic foundation. I think that there's going to be lots of new types of media that are going to be developed that we can't even imagine yet. So I think a lot of the jobs that each might have in a few years have not yet been invented. So it's very hard to really anticipate. But I think regardless of where it's going, there's going to be an opportunity to really fine tune what the visual is. There's going to be the ability to put details within the details that we haven't been able to do before. I think in the past there's been limitations. You get to the end of a project for a commercial or a movie, and you kind of like, that's as far as we could get it, the budget with the time, etc. But now you can get so much more done, and you can really push things so much further that I think it's going to open the doors for not just directors but for everybody to really fine tune exactly what the image is gonna be. So yeah, I think there could be new media platforms. New ways of working within those medium. But for now, in the short term, I think it's going to be further integration into the systems that we use, and as well as new systems developed.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of what they said. The only place I see things where I can say something different than what everyone else has already said is that my wife's a creative director, and she doesn't hire artists anymore. She just does it herself. So, ouch. Or she comes into my office and asks me to do it. But yeah, But I really think that that's where, I mean, like, I think the typical studio photographer, not necessarily not even the creatives, you know, in terms of what their, what the desired outcome is, I think especially which doesn't involve most people here, I don't think many SVA photography students have come to this. I think they're the ones that really have to consider their position.
And for me, you know, I'm bullish. I'm optimistic about this. I mean, I've spent my career thinking a lot about user interfaces and how artists interact with technology, and I'd like to personally see just more refinement, more granular controls exposed to the artist. Prompting is one thing, but we don't have the neural link yet. And as an artist, I think we all love to tweak that slider a little bit, see that how this one filter goes back and forth between this and that. So I personally would, you know, and I think that's actually very exciting that will happen at some point. We'll have more controls with these models. You know. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks to everyone here. We're going to turn it over to some questions, I guess.
Small statement and a question. I don't think we're gonna lose our job to AI. We're gonna lose our jobs to other humans using AI. So that's what I think about that. How do you guys manage bidding? Because we have clients always hoping that you integrate AI so you can do it cheaper, faster. But then when AI out of 10 shots fails in two, the whole bid falls apart. How do you go back to the client, let them know, or do you give them a high bid and then hope you do it low? Because then other vendors say, oh, we can do this with AI. And they undercut your bid and then it blows up in somebody's face. So it's like a recurrent circle.
Yeah, I can tell you, if you're fortunate enough to work for a client who's been burned, then you're fine because they know that that's exactly the potential. Like that's a possibility that could happen. It's no different than if you tell them you're going to work with an inexperienced crew, you know, on a big complex shoot. But I'm normally very transparent with the client, and I tell them that, you know, I really don't know. A lot of this is a black box, you know. So maybe what I'll do is I'll ask for some seed money, you know, for like a look development phase or something like that, a little research development phase, and let's just see how far we can take this before we have to kind of work in more traditional technologies.
I'll speak to that as well. I think yes, absolutely, transparency, and also part of that transparency is upfront to let them know that you're hitting some territories that may not work. So R&D is the way to proof of concept. And then once you have that proof of concept, then you can everybody can feel more comfortable of what they're bidding and how much it's going to cost. So getting in early enough to do that, and proving that before it gets, and on my end, I want to do that in pre-production. I don't want to do that when we start shooting. I don't want the unknowns because we've already locked the budget. As soon as you start shooting a film, you've locked your budget. And so I have no recourse to go back but to ask for more money, and that's not something that is you know, is very frowned upon, right? And so that's where you want to make sure that you're navigating the timing of that and knowing that you have room for error and to basically show that, look, this is not going to work the way we thought it was, and so therefore we can still make a change and establish if the risk is.
I think real quick, I just want to follow up. By the way, that's a Team Roto shirt, right? Yes. All right. Props to that. What you said at the beginning was absolutely correct. We're not going to lose our jobs to AI. It's going to be other people. So like, there's never been a better time to be exceptional or a worse time to be mediocre. You know, so learn all these tools because there's going to be a lot of crap that's made because everyone has access to the same systems.
A question to John. At Netflix, practically, do you accept AI as a part of your vendor's process? And do you differentiate things like the poster that you send or clean up and
I no longer work at Netflix, just to be clear. However, it's all about it's per use case. You really there's so many variables, it depends. But if you are using, and the example I gave earlier, a poster that is fully AI, and you don't intend, and it's going to be in a dark corner of the room or something where you really can't see it very well on the final product. I don't think you have. I don't think anybody has any worry to that they're going to lose out merchandising because it's not going to be extracted and created, and that. But it is something that it's pretty case. It just depends on what the is it character that might be a little different than a movie poster that's being hung in a kid's bedroom.
This question's for John. You mentioned sort of witnessing the dawn of Nuke digital domain.
Yes.
Can you speak to a little bit of sort of how this emergence of this technology is sort of similar, but also very different, and how it can sort of how you can have this perspective of zooming out into how we accomplish visual effects and how it's different from the tools a little bit.
Nuke was a little different in the sense that we knew Shake was disappearing and going to go be decommissioned. So we had to have a compositing tool in order to keep the vendor going, the company going. And then I got to see it even before it was node based. So it was something. How is this? I look at this as we used to type on a typewriter. I learned how to type on a manual typewriter. I went to an electric typewriter, then I went to a word processor where it could tell me I spelled something wrong, and then grammar, and then it was clairvoyant, and then it turned into something that was writing my words for me in ChatGPT. If you think of it that way. And so I look at this as a resource. It's not an end-all tool. I was behind that typewriter the whole time. These were my thoughts that I started. It may have completed. It may have kept me writing something in brevity because I was being too wordy. So it is something that I look at it as a resource. Maybe it helps you if you have writer's block. I'm not a writer, so I shouldn't get into that. But maybe it's something that's a tool that's going to be helpful. But I look at it more as a resource that's available. And then it's leading you to an end product that I think at the speed of things, carpenters used to use hand tools, they now use power tools. Before we had online editing, we were reconstituting film in post. It's all changed. A lot of those film editors back then have learned to get on an Avid. We had miniature shops at DD when I was there. We were 90% miniatures and we were 10% CG in 1995. And so seeing airbrush artists, painting, the supernova, model, getting onto Photoshop for the first time was and seeing, their first creation was actually really exciting. I look at it that way. I look at this as, it's here to stay. How can we best use it? I think, again, it's the screen concept. You're going to have little verticals, you're going to have your iPhones, you're going to have your TV, you're going to have a movie theater. I still think you're going to have, I think immersive experiences are important. I think people are getting that you can't just be in your living room watching this and expecting that's family time. I think you're going to go to Broadway and see a show. You're going to, maybe go to a pop-up.
Netflix is opening those Netflix experience things. There's only one.
Yes, they are.
1 mile from my house.
I mean, could you imagine that?
Before this next question, I also just want to point out that John is going to be on the next panel. I know you're very popular with the questions.
I will. Yeah. Mark.
Hey guys, thank you so much first of all for this wonderful conversation and for the talks you delivered, presentations. My question is a bit more technical. So since, as someone said, the AI tools right now, they act as an expensive slot machines, right? The amount of new versions, amount of new digital assets, it's just skyrockets, and we have the avalanche of different versions of images, videos, 3D models. How do you think it will influence on the digital asset management currently? And I would love to hear the perspective from the tools developers as well as from the VFX pros and production houses. Thank you.
Maybe I could just take a start a bit about, because I work for Avid and VFX and have consulted for many post houses and studios over the years, and asset management is a huge part of this game. And they're like Jesse was kind of talking about, like in his presentation a little bit. We're in a sort of a situation where we have all these different platforms and elements, and there's like no tracking system, right? I think tools like Weavy, tools like that will kind of bring that into an ecosystem. But yes, I mean, we need the shot grid version of for AI, and we need to track these generations and figure out like a continuous thread that's not just here's my thumbnail. These assets need to be tracked much more deeply throughout the creative process. I think you've seen, like in film, your ability to shoot film is pretty limited, and then digital, all of a sudden you have so many more assets, and you can sort of look at this as like the next evolution of assets, right? And the stuff needs to be tracked. Absolutely. Anything?
Don't turn on autosave in Comfy. It's the best advice you could ever give.
Is there one?
I think we're gonna have to leave it there because we're running out of time. But thank you.
All right, thank you.